had to be far enough away.
Oh, so
Oh,
this
yeah,
is
they be gone.
a property that's available?
Yeah, they just lowered the pressure from 9 to 6, but it's worth about 4. Well, to 7, 9 to 7.
So how come?
It's worth what, about
Oh,
4?
I bet this is it.
So they're still high.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
I'm not gonna offer.
okay.
Well,
Looks pretty.
The City Council for the City of Rollingwood will come to order Wednesday, August 21, 2024 at 6:01 p.m. and we will begin with roll call.
Brooke Brown,
Alec Robinson.
Kevin Glasheen.
Phil McDuffie?
Sarah Hudson.
Gavin Massigo being quorum present. Thank you, Council. Move on to agenda item, actually we'll move on to public comment. Anyone here wishing to make comment on items not on the agenda this evening? I don't think that we.
She'll be here at 7. I would imagine.
Yeah, she probably does.
Okay, with that, we will move off of public comment and on to agenda item number 2, budget workshop. Agenda item number 2, update and discussion on the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. Council, thank you. We're nearing completion of our budget workshop series as we do every year. Tonight, we will be giving you a couple of updates on previous documents that you've seen, but then mainly tonight's discussion will be around tax rate. We have posted the voter approval rate of 0.2058 per $100 valuation, so we'll have a discussion about that as well as the other tax rates at your discretion, and then we will also I'll ask you to make some straw poll decisions on various exceptional items that we've talked about and laid out in previous workshop meetings. So we'll get an idea of what the council's preference would be on those on those exceptional items so that we can wrap up the final budget for your approval and for the final approval of a tax rate. So with that, I will tag team here with Ms. Wayman to make sure that we're giving you a few updates so that we can get a few things out of the way. One thing in your packet, we did repost all of the budget worksheets that we previously went over in the previous work sessions. I think those, Ashley, have all been updated at this point.
They have all been fully updated, nothing substantial, and they're still waiting. They do not have any exceptional items rolled into it, so those are still, they're still zeroed out or are waiting to add those items if approved.
Okay, so those are for your review, but they have been updated. And with that, I think we can now move on. I'll probably have Abel. You want to come up, Abel? So just to, or maybe sit next to I don't want to make you just stand there, but maybe sit next to the podium so that we can ask you any questions on these tax rates. I'll now move to, before we move to the exceptional items, I'll move to the document titled City of Rollingwood Revenues at No New Revenue and Voter Approval Tax Rates. Can you put that on the screen so they can see which one I'm working from?
Yeah, I can actually share it on Zoom.
And all of these documents are posted online for those following along at home. Again, it's the document titled City of Rollingwood Revenues at No New Revenue and Voter Approval Rates. I'm just going to walk through kind of how this document's laid out.
what is that called in our packet?
It is it's titled 2.
Okay,
Okay.
revenues and expenditures?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay, thank you.
So first and foremost, resist the urge to read this left to right for the most part. The important thing here is your revenues are listed in those first columns to the left, and so you have your total revenues that are raised at the various rates. This is a document you've seen in the past at previous years' workshops. You have the current year actual revenue projection in the far left gray column, and then you have the posted no new revenue column. It's the top of that is 0.1974, and then the middle column under revenues you have the actual no new revenue, at .1990, and then you have the draft voter approval revenue rate under the yellow column, which is the .2058. Again, that's what we posted. I will have Ashley give you a quick explanation of the difference between that first column and the second column. Feel free to call on Abel
Yes.
if you want.
I will touch on with Abel.
But just give a quick explanation of the difference between what we refer to as the no new revenue rate, which is the methodology we're required to use, and then what the actuality of that second column is.
Okay, so the first column, the posted no new revenue rate, so this is the rate that we are required to show to the public is our no new revenue rate. This rate does not take into account our additional, Abel, I'm looking at you, the debt, that's correct, right? So the posted no new revenue rate is the same to raise the exact same amount as we did last year, but it doesn't take into account the new debt on the roll. So we've issued a little bit more of debt this year, and so if we were to go with the 1974 as our tax rate, we would not truly bring in the exact same amount of revenue as we did last year. That's the point of the no new revenue rate. However, because it doesn't take into account our new debt, it would not completely get us exactly what we got last year from an M&O standpoint for what we need to do our maintenance and operations budget. The .1990 is our actual NNR revenue, NNR rate, and that does take into account our new debt. And so we would say at a minimum, if we're looking at adopting the no new revenue rate, staff recommendation would be to go with the actual, not the posted, because it is the one that would actually bring our maintenance and operations to the same amount of money that we received last year.
Great explanation.
Clear as mud?
Clear as mud.
Okay.
You still did a better job than I would have done with it, so nice job. In the middle column, so now I'm moving left to right across the overall document, and the middle column is your expenditures column. So this is the draft expenditures for 2024, 2025. Now this is the end product. I just showed you that final document that had all of the budget worksheets that we went through on all of the expenditures over the last many workshops. So this middle column is the culmination of all that work. So that's the bottom line number of all of those different workshop discussions that we had, and so that middle column is your draft expenditures. Just for the base budget, again, it does not take into account the exceptional items that we'll talk about here in a minute. And then on the far right column, the far right side of the document, you have revenues and expenditures, and obviously this is where we true up the various revenues with the expenditures, and so you see the combined, the combination of both of those. And because we're giving you for your consideration the various different tax rates, whether it's the no new revenue or the actual no new revenue or the voter approval rate, that's why you have three different sort of versions of that over on the right hand side. The most important thing from this document, in my opinion, probably is if you'll follow that down to the below that portion of the document, you'll see kind of the end total numbers, right? And so you have the general fund budget balance. So this is the general fund budget balance once you take into account all of your revenues plus your expenditures, and you again have it reflected in the red column under the no new revenue, under the tan column as the actual no new revenue, and then under the expenditures at the voter approval rate. Actually, I think we mistitled that.
Oh, that last one should say voter approval.
Ignore the yellow on the far right, where it says expenditures under over no new revenue rate. That should actually be the
Voter approval.
VA rate. Sorry about that. Just caught it in real time. So the bottom lines to those would be, we would be theoretically 84,000 to the good. Again, this is before any exceptional items are considered. It's also before I'm going to talk to you about some long-term 10-year expenditure planning that we'll talk about in a minute. But we would be 84,000 to the good under the red column. You'd be 109,345 to the good under the middle column, and under the voter approval rate, you'd be 216,480 to the good. Those dollar amounts are the dollar amounts that we'll talk about here in a moment, or the baseline dollar amount that you have to consider with some of your exceptional items. The next row there is the general fund projected unexpended balance, right? And so you have to remember that at the end of the year, we will have an unexpended balance in our bank account. Just think of it like your bank account. There will be a total dollar amount in that bank account that will be our unexpended balance. And under each one of those columns, it's 1.9 million. Under the red column, 1.95, under all of them, it's 1.9 is our unexpended balance. The next line, though, is the one that's important. It's the reserve, the 6-month reserve that we've been working on for a number of years. And so we have to back out what we consider that 6-month reserve to be. So our 6-month reserve that we've worked very hard over the last 6 years to establish is 1.842. And so you deduct that out of that expected unexpended balance, and then that gives you your discretionary spending for decisions. So when you have decisions to make tonight on your exceptional items, under the far left red column, you would have 200,000 to work with. Under the middle column, you'd have 226,000 to work with. And under the voter approval rate, you would have 333,306 to work with. Over on the bottom left side of the sheet, this gives you a refresher. We started something new last budget cycle, if you'll remember, of really trying to get our arms around and plan for not only keeping a 6-month reserve in our main account, but also making sure that we had a 6-month reserve in our water fund and in our wastewater fund. So we started making sure that we account for those so that you also have some reserve dollars in those accounts. So in the water fund, the projected unexpended balance at the end of the year is $957, less the water fund 6-month reserve of $705,000, which gives you a discretionary spending for decision in the water fund only of $252,555. That becomes important because when you look at the decision document in a moment related to the exceptional items, if you were to approve some of those exceptional items, you remember that some of those funds come out of the water fund, a portion of them may come out of the wastewater fund, et cetera. So you may not, if you approve one of those exceptional items, you may have dollars coming out of different funds, right? And so that'll be reflected in that decision document, and those are the dollars that you're working with. And that holds true for that last portion there, which is the wastewater fund. The projected wastewater unexpended balance at the end of the year is $768,542, less our 6-month reserve that we try to keep in that fund of $614,894, which gives you a discretionary spending in the wastewater fund of $153,648. That middle section is the street fund 301. The 301 projected unexpended balance for discretionary spending for decision is $583,739. We don't keep a reserve dollar amount in that, but if you'll recall, those dollars have built up over the years because that's a portion of the sales tax that gets earmarked every year, and those dollars can only be spent on street-related expenses. So it has built up over the years, and those are some of the dollars that we are now trying to spend on our streets and try to use those selectively on street projects. That's a run through of this document. It just gives you a sense of the dollar amounts that you have to work with. Again, you'll see a lot of these, some of these dollars reflected on the decision document here in a moment, but are there any questions on this document?
It's not on here, but it's related to here.
Okay.
Do we know what the average value of a home in Rollingwood is?
We do. Maybe the one thing we didn't prepare for, but
I think it's this 2.2.
I got it. Do you tell me if I'm wrong? It is on the document. 2,204,741.
Yes.
Got it right.
So 2.2 million.
2.2 million is the average. And that does become important in a minute in a discussion we'll have around the tax rate. I think that's it. I want to talk to you about our long-term expenditure planning in a minute, but any other questions on this document? Okay, keep it close. Let's now move, if you would, share the decision document with them. Okay. Over the past, I think 2 budget workshops, we've laid out a number of the exceptional items for your review. These are all of the exceptional items that have been brought forward. In your packet and posted online is the full explanation of all of these exceptional items and the exceptional item request forms. So if you have any remaining questions about those exceptional items, these are all the documents that you've already been through, but they are posted if you have questions or people at home are interested in what these exceptional items are. What I'd like to do is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead and
Okay.
note whatever.
Just make a couple quick notes. At the last council meeting, there was a question for legal about whether the park tree and irrigation project, if planting trees would be considered a capital project, and the answer is yes. That would be considered a capital project or a capital expenditure. And then one other quick clarification: we showed the grinder pump fee for some kind of grinder pump maintenance last month. I believe we stated at that time that we had 220 grinder pumps in the city. We have 120 grinder pumps in the city, so we may have overstated that number in our last discussion. But we went back and made sure with Public Works, and it's approximately 120 grinder pumps.
Those all residential, or does that include commercial?
Just residential.
All residential. Actually, I do want to make one other point. Can you pull up the 10-year expenditure planning document? So we're not going to spend a great deal of time on this document, but this is again, we started this last year. We told you that it was very rudimentary last year, but we told you that we were going to work on it over this previous fiscal year. We have done so. And just a quick reminder, what we're trying to accomplish here with this 10-year expenditure planning document is we're trying to get a grasp on and lay out in a methodical way when we have larger capital expenditures or asset expenditures over time, so that we don't experience what we have from time to time experienced in the past, where we don't plan for them, we haven't written them down, we don't see them coming, and then we roll into a budget cycle, and then we have a huge expenditure from the police department or a big expenditure from the public works department or whichever department it may be. And we're still going to have those from time to time, but the purpose of this document and trying to lay it out like this is to try to get ahead of that planning, so that the ones that we're capable of planning for ahead of time, we do so. And so that there will always be surprises, but a lot of times in the past, there have been things that we've been surprised by in the budgeting that really shouldn't have been a surprise. It shouldn't have been a surprise that we were going to need a new backhoe, or it shouldn't have been a surprise that we were going to need new radios for the PD. It shouldn't have been a surprise that that the vehicles were coming to their end of life. So this is trying to get at that, so that we can try to take a moment in each budget cycle to sort of look ahead and say, okay, this year was, and this is where I'm going with this, this year was pretty light, but look what's coming next year, and look what's coming 2 years after that. Again, it's not in stone, and some of these things could be deferred. Some of them, again, other things may creep to the top and cause a problem. But just a quick recap here. You look at the replacement year, fiscal year 24-25, which is what we're budgeting for now. And these total around $34,445. And you see they're pretty basic things, and they're things that you've talked about in your exceptional items discussions. But all in all, pretty light year in terms of these types of larger asset and capital outlays. Skip ahead, though, to 25-26, and then I think, and as you look out into the other out years, you'll see the benefit of trying to do this exercise. Next year we anticipate in 25-26 probably having around 117,000 of various capital outlays that we would need your consideration on. In the year after that, it's 150. Then we expect it to go down to around 104, and then back up to 142, 147, 120, 145, 147, etc. So again, not in stone, but it gives you a sense of kind of what's coming down the pike in terms of some of those larger expenditures for consideration. That does become important in the discussion we're about to have, because spoiler alert, I am going to be recommending to you to go with the voter approval rate, which you have already posted for at the 20.58 or 20 cents, 0.2058 cents per 100 valuation. And a big reason of that is, in addition to the exceptional items, which I think are all very valid exceptional items that you can make decisions on tonight. In addition to that, I'm also looking at these out years in 25, 26, 26, 27, and going forward. And I think it's important to, you may have a little bit of extra this year, but it's probably going to be important going into the next year and the year after to make sure that you've built up a little bit of extra reserve so that you can go into these future budget work cycles with the not having to make quite the tough decisions, because with the caps on our ability to raise certain revenues, you can only, you're only going to be able to go up 3.5% without potentially bumping up to or needing to go above the voter approval rate. And I don't want it to ever have that, I don't want us to ever be faced with that decision. And so I think it's prudent to take a little bit of, take an extra bite this year so that you're well positioned going into the future budget cycles. Yes, sir.
I have a couple of quick questions. That 3.5% that triggers, or that's the cap, I guess, for voter approval rate, is that an increase in the 3.5% increase in the rate or in the revenue? Because the revenue is going to increase through inflation on houses and sales tax increases through.
I know the answer, but I don't want to mess it
Okay.
up. So good. No, you gotta listen. I didn't
I
want to
guess
mess it
it's
up.
the
So.
rate. I'm guessing it's the rate.
No, it's the levy.
Oh, the levy.
Yeah.
Which
The
Isn't that
county
the rate?
calculates what the last year's Seminole levy was, and then using the new values, come up and multiply by 3.5% as far as the levy's concerned, and that's how much you can. What rate do you need to come up with that 3.5% increase in your levy?
what does levy mean then?
I'm sorry.
What does levy mean if it's not
How
rate?
much you tax the
It's how many
taxpayers?
cents per $100 valuation, right?
The levy itself, dollars, actually dollars.
It's how many dollars we bring in.
Okay.
That can go up by 3.5%.
Right.
Okay, so it's the revenue.
Yeah, it's the revenue.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, that's
Got
what I
it.
was wondering. So what happens if the revenue increases because property values have increased and our rate hasn't increased? Do we have to lower our rate then to avoid triggering a voter approval rate?
That's what.
Correct.
That's
Oh,
correct.
wow.
Yeah.
Well,
That's crazy.
But we
Interesting.
do get to, like, new value that's added.
Right.
Like, if
Comes out.
there's a new house that's built, we get to add that,
Yes.
and that is not part of the 3.5%.
As opposed to just fluctuations in value of existing tax base.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
And in fairness to the legislature, I don't always defend them, but they were trying to get away from that very
Right.
question,
Well, that's
because
why I asked.
historically people would say that they were lowering taxes because your rate would be going down, but they would really be eating that up with the valuation. So there's, I lowered your tax. No, you lowered the rate.
Not the
The
taxes.
amount of the amount that I wrote to the city went up.
And-
So, yes, ma'am.
What's our current tax rate? I tried to find that.
Our current tax rate is, I may have this here. I can tell you all of
It's 1917.1917.
0.1983.
Oh,
Property
With-
tax. Oh,
with-
that's
No,
proposed.
that
I'm
was
sorry.
the
That
proposed.
was the proposed.
yeah, it's 0.1917 because we went below, somewhere below that
Yeah.
last year for.
0.1917. It has really stayed right around that 20-cent mark. Honestly, even since I was very first on council back into 2016, it's always stayed right around that 20-cent mark. I mean, it goes up, it goes down, but it's kind of always been right in that
And,
range.
and that tax rate is before, that's without any increase in debt service for the bonds that we sold this past.
Correct. The
fiscal year.
the INS gets rolled in automatically,
All right.
as did the voter approved debt. And as you issue that debt, it gets automatically rolled in.
Okay, and one other question. You're talking about looking ahead to these projected equipment replacement expenditures in future years. Are those And, you know, we're talking about what to do, we're gonna have some surplus, I guess is for lack of a better word, under these budget proposals. Are you budgeting future capital reserves anywhere? I didn't see it anywhere on the budget. Like we have our 5-year reserves, but that doesn't include budgeting for.
So funny story there. We've tried to sort of do that in the past, and the auditors do not.
They don't like
They
it.
don't like it. So yes and no. We discuss it. We talk about it. We sort of account for it, and then we don't earmark it because we've tried to do that, and then they roll it back out for us. So.
And so what do we have, a carry forward balance from last year in reserves, or where do you show that? Is it show up in like our reserves?
It basically just goes into your unexpended balance at the end of the year. So you get
Okay.
to the end of the year, you look at your bank account, that's your unexpended balance. Whatever you've chosen to make sure it is in there is fine. But when we take that balance and we try to earmark something and say, oh, this is for future planned
Trucks.
retirements
Yeah.
or, you know, different things that are going to be out here, the auditors
Say
no
no.
likey. And so they're
Okay.
like, nope, got to take that out and just put it in there as the unexpended balance.
Okay.
Did I mess that up, Abel?
Yes, sir.
I did mess it up. You were correct, and you messed it up.
Yes, we have no bananas. Okay.
Okay, so with that, let's go back to the decision document. My favorite document that Ashley's come up with over the years. And I still don't know how she gets all these formulas to work. But let me show you how, well, actually, you show them since it's your creation along with me. I just told you what I wanted, but you figured out how to do it. So explain to them how this document works.
Sure. So the total cost of each of our exceptional items is listed over here. You can see the breakdown, how much of it comes out of general fund, what is for the water fund, wastewater fund, and street fund. We will talk about the items here, and at any point you all want to see, well, what would our balances, which are down at the bottom, if you see, we have here amount remaining after approved items. So these numbers down at the bottom came from that other worksheet where we had one at the posted no new revenue rate, one at the actual no new revenue rate, and then one down here at our voter approval rate. So those numbers match. But as we decide to approve items, so say we want to do this public works truck here, if we approve that item, it now reduces these amounts down here by that exceptional item. So you're able to see in real time how much actual money you have left over for exceptional items. And we can play with them and change up the amounts.
And depending on how we budgeted in the expenditures workshop, so if you budgeted something, or if one of these comes out of, say, the general fund, a portion of the general fund, and a portion of it comes out of the water fund, and a portion of it comes out of the wastewater fund, then that gets reflected in real time and that's the beauty of her formulas here, is that those will be deducted out of the appropriate spot. So what you want to be watching as we make these decisions here in a moment is that yellow column at the bottom left, because it will give you a real-time analysis of kind of where you are in spending the dollars.
So like your debit card balance.
It is very much like that. Spoiler alert, there's some of those rates that won't get you all the way to the end, and there's one of them that will, if you were to approve all of them. So with that, I'd like to just kind of start kind of at the top. Again, I'm going to ask you to take some votes on this. This is sort of a straw. I will ask you to vote. You're not voting on the final budget. You're not voting on anything other than these exceptional items. But it will give us a sense of depending on your decisions on these straw poll votes, it'll give us a sense of how you want us to wrap this final budget up for you. With that, I'll start at the top on this exceptional item decision document. I'll start with these top three. And just talk to you a little bit about the COLAs that we've talked about in the past. Again, AF means all funds, so these top three come out of all funds. And you've got three options. You've got 1A, 1B, 1C. You can also, if you wanted to do something different, and you have in years past, if you wanted to do, say, a 4% COLA, you could, you know the numbers because you would be basically approving AF-1C and AF-1A together. That would get you to 4. What we have typically always tried to approve some sort of cost of living adjustment for our staff. I think it's an important thing for us to always consider. It's not obviously a guarantee, and it's not something that we could always do every year. But again, I've said this in the past. My position on the COLAs is that these simply allow you to keep up with the inflationary rates. We hire our people. We do the best we can to bring them in at a competitive level, a level that is competitive in the market. But obviously, especially these days, that can get stagnant quickly when you look at inflation. Lots of talk about inflation these days. I think it's down to 2.9%. Fed cuts probably coming maybe next month. Who knows? So the inflation is cooling. I think last year or the year before, when it was topping out at 8 or 9%, the council did dig deep and I think try to get at least halfway there for the staff. And I think we did a 4% COLA at that point. So my general sense on these COLAs is I always think that it's appropriate to try to keep up generally with where the inflation is or has been for the last 12 months. I think that's a fair way to approach it. We'll talk again in a moment about the discretionary salary increases that will try to get us a little bit more competitive in the actual marketplace, but that's not really, in my opinion, not really what we're talking about with the COLAs. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to have a discussion about it. Again, I think, it looks like, at least for the moment, the inflation is kind of leveling out around the 2.8, 2.9% mark. I think a 3% COLA would be appropriate. Obviously, that number has come down a little bit over the past year, but I think going forward, you're probably looking at something around that in this 24-25 cycle. So I would think something around that 3% mark is probably appropriate. You do not have to, like I said, it's really, you can do a combination of these top three exceptional items, or you can just select one of them, and if you did that, we would just zero the other two out and go with whichever one you select. So happy to discuss it, happy to take a motion on it, and we can take a straw poll.
So I would propose, it's not really a motion at this point, right?
It's not real, I mean, I can take it like
I
that.
would propose the 3%. And other than Ashley, do we have anybody else that is considered non-contract?
No, Ashley is our only, is the only, she would be the only person that doesn't get this, because her contract is direct with the city council. We can have and probably will have a discussion about that at some point, but it would be handled separately.
Okay, so police chief is not contracted?
No,
Okay.
it's not. I'm not mistaken.
You're correct.
I'm correct, yes.
So I would just point out that, the July inflation rate's 2.9, but for the whole year, it's supposed to be 3.2 as an average. Last year, 2023 was 4%, and 2022 was 9.5%. So
Yeah.
if we only did 3% in the past, I mean, it just I will also add that I'm more focused on looking at market rate, because wage inflation varies for different positions.
It does,
and
yeah.
So I'm glad we've got the discretionary increases that we're going to get to discussing later, but I just, I know that inflation's been rough, and so I'd be in favor of at least the 3%, and I would even support the 4%.
Okay. Other thoughts, comments? Bill, anybody?
I'm with Kevin
Okay.
on that.
I'll tell you what I'll do. Hold on, let me look at something. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a straw poll on 3. So that's AF-1C, and then if someone wants to add to that, happy to do that. But let's go ahead and knock the low-hanging fruit out, because I think we're going to get there for sure.
At least 3, basically.
Yeah.
The vote.
So all those in favor of adoption of AF-1C, a COLA at 3%, which is a total cost of $59,208. That'd be $43,416 out of the general fund, $7,800 out of the water fund, $7,800 out of wastewater fund. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. So watch this. Watch it go. It's great. Oh, it's already done. Oh, you saw the writing on the wall, did you? Okay.
Money in her bank account.
Okay. All right, so that one we have approved. Okay, I will entertain any motions on these, any additional motions on these three. Happy to do that, or happy to keep moving and come back to it, however you want to proceed, council.
I make a motion that we add another 1% AF-1A.
Okay, you have again, I'm not going to take a second because this is a straw poll, but we have that motion. Any discussion?
I'm in favor.
Okay. No? You're no. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. And 4 ayes, no nays. That's good. Okay, so we will approve that one. And also, council, you can always, we can always come, if we get to the end of this and the numbers aren't working for you, you can always come, again, this is a straw poll exercise, so we can always adjust things. Okay, with that, I'll assume that there's not an additional motion, and we will move off of these exceptional items, and I'll take no action on AF1B. Okay, well, if you will, I can't see, can you tell us what our current available balances are under?
Our online doesn't
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 change.
Yeah.
update.
Right, yes, sorry, at the calculated no new revenue or the posted tax, no new revenue rate, we have 143,000 left. At the actual no new revenue rate, we have 168,000 left, and at the voter approval rate, we have 275,000 left. Those are all in general fund, because those did impact the water and wastewater fund. In the water fund, we would have 242,000 left, and in the wastewater fund, we would have 143,000 left.
Okay. All right, so with that, we will move, in these next AF2A, AF2B, AF2C, and AF2D, those were my exceptional items originally. Those are those mileage stipends that we talked about that sort of evolved into that discussion that we had around some discretionary salary dollars to be added to the budget. So those have all been withdrawn, so we'll move off of those. And then let's go ahead and I would like to do at least AF3 next, and then we may skip around a little bit. This one's a pretty low budget item. I do think it's needed. We've got some public works truck need. This would be, again, the cost in this, we're not buying a $16,000 vehicle. This is the financing cost for year one. And do you want to add anything to that? What is it, a 5-year?
It's a 5-year.
I think it's reasonable. Again, we've kind of moved to this leasing option for these types of things. It gives us some budget certainty and makes it a little bit easier on you year to year. So I'd be happy to take a motion on AF3.
Can I just point out one thing?
Sure.
Like on the 16,000, right? Like what's the payment the next year and the next year and the next year? Because I don't really see that on the
They'll be the same.
It's the same.
In this case.
long-term planning. We should update the long-term planning to have that. Obviously, if this goes through,
I
there's
believe
like, you said it'd be 5 years.
I think hold on. I don't want to misstate.
I see a public work.
PW01.
Water, which vehicle is it?
So this will be PW01. I'll switch over to that. That is something I meant to mention on this item document, if I can.
Oh, it gets
Find
split
it.
across the different.
That's it gets me.
Right.
It gets me
Mhm.
every time.
Okay.
Yes, and the lighter, if it's in one of the lighter sections, so for police, when you see the darker squares, so they have the 17,000 here starting in fiscal year 25 and 26, that's when we start on a new vehicle. So that 17,000 is then spread over the next 5 years, and then we've projected out after that 5 years is over, if we need to get a new vehicle at that time, then it's going to cost us 20,000 per year for 5 years. And so I've tried to kind of delineate where the actual vehicle, we receive the vehicle, and the payment is spread out over
I see.
multiple years.
Thank you.
Any motions to be had on AF3?
Move to accept AF3.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie. Discussion. Again, we're kind of being casual about this, but all those in yes, ma'am.
I'm in favor.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. All right, being 5 ayes, no nays, looks like that one's approved. Okay, as much as I love the CCTV camera, I'm gonna come back to it, because I do think the larger ticket item, here in the discretionary salary increases at 100,000, I think that's, I wanna make sure you've got plenty of bandwidth there. What are the dollar amounts that are left at this point under each rate?
Under the posted no new revenue, we have 141,000. Actual no new revenue, we have 166,000, and voter approval rate, we have 273,000.
So you have plenty of dollars to do this one. Again, of these, I think it's one of our most important exceptional items in my opinion. Don't let the street maintenance and repairs exceptional item that's coming up next spook you, because that's going to come out of a different bucket of money. That's real. Yes, ma'am.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
For example, where I'm trying to get to is for the items that may come out of water and street. For example, AF4. Tell me what there were for AF4. What I'm seeing, and maybe tell me just yes or no. What I'm seeing for AF4 is if we approved that, it would come out of the available fund amount for water and street, not out of the general fund amount.
You're correct, and you caught me. I was trying to give you plenty of room within. I thought that a portion of that actually was coming out of general fund, but you have.
It just made
You
me
are
think about
correct 100%, and actually there would be no reason to not take CCTV up next. So let's actually do that.
Can-
Maintenance.
Go ahead.
Before we go through all of these, can we talk about which funds these other things would be coming from? Because I'm wondering if the tree trimming, the additional tree trimming services, can we not use street funds for that?
So we've talked about that issue, and actually Brooke brought up a great point. So it's actually, I'm making it more complicated than it needed to be. The general fund, water fund, wastewater, and streets, that tells you exactly where it's coming out of. So you're 100% correct. And so,
that's the way I was reading it.
yeah. So we can come back to AF4 to answer your question. We did talk about that. I think we looked into the question of whether tree trimming could come out of streets.
It can if it's right of way related.
If it's
That's what it is.
Well,
if
that-
it's truly right of way related, it possibly could.
Other than trimming stuff in the park
Right.
and right at City Hall, I mean, that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Is street
Ms.
trimming.
Hudson, I cannot hear you.
Oh.
If you could move your mic over.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was just asking if we could use funds from the street department account for the additional tree trimming services.
Oh.
And yes, the answer to that is yes. I would encourage you maybe to leave a portion of it over in general fund so that
Well, for
if
the-
there is,
for the park,
if the
right.
park or other things
Right.
like that, yeah. But yes,
And the camera is that sewer? The
That
camera
sewer
is the
camera.
sewer camera?
yeah,
Sewer and water, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no,
No,
actually,
not water.
No.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
oh.
We don't wanna put that in our water pipes.
Se-
And storm
yeah.
drain. Yeah.
Sewer and
sorry.
storm.
Sewer and
Okay.
storm.
You can
Yeah.
do water first and
Yeah.
then sewer.
Has to sit out a week.
So the discretionary salary increases are all shown as coming out of the general fund also? Would not some of those come out of water and wastewater?
They would, depending on who they were
Right.
applied to.
Yeah,
Right,
it
but I mean,
depends.
we
Got
have,
a little
And
wiggle
if
room
it
there.
came out of a different one, what we would bring you like we would bring you a budget amendment to move that over.
I'm just saying, if we're trying to figure out
I get it.
which bucket we're pulling this stuff out of, we have
Right.
other buckets
That one's
that could
that
be
one's tough
contributing.
because you don't know exactly
Right,
how it's going to play out. But
right.
okay, let's go back to, if it's okay, let's go back to AF4. for the 75,000, it's 37,500 out of wastewater, 35,700 out of streets. Is there a motion on AF4?
And could you just remind us, I understand that's a every 5-year requirement, right? And we've contracted it out and it costs about that much to contract it out, right?
Actually, if we contract it out, it's twice as much. It's 150,000
Okay,
every 5 years.
every 5 years, okay.
Correct.
So we saved 75,000 by buying this thing.
You do.
Actually, in the long run, you'll save a lot more.
Yeah, a lot
than
more.
But I mean, just even in this first
Yes, sir.
cycle, that's great. Okay, thanks.
And we have been, that's one of those that we've been planning for,
Right.
that's just sort of rolled into that unexpended. So you have the dollars, and it's because of decisions you've already made, but yes, the dollars are there, and you save money going forward, so.
And at any given time that we need the camera, instead of outsourcing it for any other thing other than, to be in compliance with TCEQ, we don't have to outsource it. And I don't know what the going rate is for 1 day or 2 days, but we'll have it in-house.
And we do have to look down holes more than you would know.
And the older the infrastructure gets, the more we have to keep up with the maintenance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sounds like a good plan.
I move approval of AF4.
All those in favor of AF4, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, approved. Got that one already in?
Got it.
Okay, let's go then to AF5. This is discretionary salary increases that we've talked about before. I think we had a pretty robust discussion on this previously. Again, the concept here is we don't know how that's going to play out over the course of the next year or so, but having some additional dollars to be able to try to be competitive in the market and give some merit here and there would be helpful. So, any motion?
How many employees do we have total?
Today,
Today, I think we have 17 or 18.
17 or 18.
Usually
And
we have
how
about
many-
20,
How many empty spaces do we have?
2, 3,
3 right now.
3.
And I'm in favor of this. I would just point out that all told, it amounts to about 5%, but it's kind of to me, is a catch-up for, back when we had the 9% inflation and, also just remaining competitive in the marketplace, which is why I'm glad it's discretionary for administration and the mayor to apply it where we need to keep people that need to be kept.
Perfect. I'll take that as a motion.
It is.
Further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. 5 ayes, no nays. Approve that one. Okay, the next one is, this comes out of the street fund. So this is everything out of the street fund. Again, if you'll look down at the bottom, you may not be able to see it there, but the street fund available amount is $583,739. This is again just trying to put some additional dollars out of that unexpended balance that has built up over time to try to continue to do some of our street maintenance. And the council, if you recalled, you accepted the street maintenance prioritization plan just last month, and so we do have a good plan in place to start executing. This will start putting some dollars there to be able to start spending those dollars.
And
And this is in addition. You already have some dollars in the base budget for this. This will be in addition to those base budget
Okay.
dollars.
And the base budget dollars are those dollars that are left over from the bond, part of the bond package for the water line, because that included some street work.
No, that's actually
Money.
separate. Most of what's in the base budget is what we expect to come in revenue from that sales tax that has to be spent. So
Dedicated.
basically we're trying to spend what we believe will be coming in this next fiscal year, and then you're just adding to that from dollars that weren't spent in past years.
And then there's still another, about 500,000 out of the bond package that would also get spent on resurfacing.
Yes, that's about right, yeah.
I'd say about that much, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to carry a reserve in that street fund going forward, or no?
We don't actually, no, we're actually trying to
Spend it?
spend it down, yeah. Not spend it all the way down, but carrying 500,000 and not doing anything with it and letting it just build up does not seem prudent.
as I understood, we're trying to spend it down to a level that we can maintain and spend going forward.
That's
kind of
right.
that, according to that road plan.
That's right. And I think within 4 to 5 years, we can spend what we believe will come in. You can spend down out of this, and then within 5 years, I think then you can be on kind of an annual 150 to 200 that'll keep you, keep us going on an annual basis. This is the one that I said, you're spending more than you're bringing in right now, and if we get hit by a bus, somebody has to remember to take that back down at some point. But for now, it's good to try to spend 300 or 400.
What are we spending it on?
Asphalt,
This would just
Resurfacing?
Patching.
resurfacing, yeah. It was
some of that rejuvenation.
some of that rejuvenation that was kind of I think the first phase will be a rejuvenation project.
All right, so what if we want to, we approve that street plan. Does this cover everything that we wanted to do this year on the street plan, or should we add stuff to the street plan or add more authority to spend that fund down more so we can add? Because we haven't really come up with a scope of a request for qualifications or contract for that work yet, right?
This will get a good start on it, because to your point earlier with the bond fund, like, there's a significant amount of dollars that will be going into a number of the streets. I think we just, did they finish today? Did they
they'll
finish today?
Finish tomorrow.
They'll finish
Friday.
tomorrow, so if you've
It's-
been around, they've actually started phase 1 of the repaving on some of these streets that
Oh, okay.
are done, so.
I was gonna say, my understanding was we don't really know by fiscal year what's gonna be spent on streets out of the bond fund,
Right.
because that will happen as the projects and the Google project get done.
Right.
So it's a little hard to budget it, because we don't know the
Right.
timing, not that we don't know.
It's gonna happen.
We've
but-
got a good priority, but we don't know the timing.
That's
very well.
correct. And we want to make
Is the
sure
way
that
I
timing,
understand it.
absolutely right, yep. Anyway, I think this combined with what's in the base budget it'll be a good start, also combined with what's in the bond, so. Any motions on this one?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve, exceptional item 100-30-1, 150,000 extra out of the street unexpended balance. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we approve that one. Ashley, tell us where we are.
That brings your street department amount available to $394,579. That did not have a effect on our general fund, but the previous item did. So at our posted no new revenue rate, we have 41,415 left. At the actual no new revenue rate, we have 66,623 left. And at the voter approval rate, we have 173,758.
Okay, council, so you're coming into the home stretch here on exceptional items. The ones that are left, just a quick recap, you've got exceptional item 100-55-1. This is the right-of-way landscape and trail refurbishment to include near the pool area. You've got the 100-55-2, which is the tree and irrigation project. That would be 50,000 also. That's the first one was 50,000. This one's 50,000, and then you have the additional tree trimming services 100-65-1, which is also at 50,000. We can consider Ms. Hudson's idea to maybe move that over out of a different fund, or a portion of it out of a different fund, if you would like. All of these are very worthy projects. I think they're all very justifiable. That said, I'm happy to take them up in whatever order anyone would.
I have a
Again,
question.
yes,
155-2, where's that project located?
this is the project.
It's the Parks Department
This is
project.
this was the recommendation that came out of the Parks Commission.
Okay,
Um,
so there's the possibility of funding that elsewhere. I would take that out.
RCDC.
Correct.
And I think the same holds true really for the trail project, could be RCDC funds, and I think that should be RCDC funds. I'd love to see it get fixed, but there's not really an approved plan yet, and I do think those are both great RCDC projects.
And what did RCDC in their budget last year, I think they put some dollars aside for specific
50,000.
They did,
50,000.
They
50,000.
earmarked 50,000.
And they said they were, and that's supposed to cover, I think 30,000 of that was for the retaining wall that they approved. But they also, talked about 50,000 for the next
Recurring.
year too, and kind of thereafter. But there might be sentiment to do more out of RCDC as they have worked through discussions of other opportunities, since they're so limited on what they can spend money on.
I will say they did approve their budget at their most recent meeting, and it does include the 50,000, but again, anything would still have to come before them and the council as a project, and they amend their budget at any time for those projects, so it could definitely be added to if needed.
Agreed. Yes.
Okay, so we've heard from two council members. Yes, ma'am.
My recommendation would be for the tree and irrigation project, that we keep that funded here with the idea we're gonna seek RCDC funding. That will let us then amend the budget, and we can do the project if there's some kind of glitch in getting approval through the RCDC on that. Because I think that, you know, this is the trees that would be planted along the
Parking.
road, between the fence and the road, and along the swimming pool fence. And I think people will really appreciate that.
I agree
So I'd
with
like
you.
to see it get started so we can get some shade there.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that's a prudent approach. However, part of the exercise we're doing here is going to be setting, you know, to the best of our ability, budget and tax rate based on what we expect to be happening. So that's why I was saying I believe we can make a strong case for this to be funded from RCDC, perhaps, if they're agreeable.
And I think, I don't disagree with your sentiment. I do agree with where you are, Ms. Brown. I mean, one compromise position, too, could also be, you know, picking one or the other of these, or funding either of them at 25,000. Like you could also, you don't have to stick with the 50,000, right? You could-
And I'm just not as familiar with the right-of-way, but I would think.
And that was my harebrained
We could
idea,
do-
based on my conversations with Mr. Glasheen, of, hey, it'd be nice to have some extra dollars if we wanted to try to sort of do some
Yes.
landscaping in front of, in that corner that
And
everybody.
I've seen it since then, and it needs work.
It does need
Yeah.
work.
But the
It's-
pool is doing that.
They're doing some of it.
I mean, right after our meeting last time, they started tearing out all the shrubs and
Yeah.
putting new stuff in, and
There's still that walkway kind of needs to be built up, and there's still some things in our right of way that I think it's Probably
The
worthy of-
concern with, on that, until we know who has title, we can't get RCDC funding. But we don't, I think the city probably
a good
owns
point.
everything from the fence to the curb,
yeah,
but there's been a debate about that.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we've never figured it out.
Well,
Not
it's,
yet.
you know, it's a matter of getting somebody to pull out the deeds. And
Yeah, and the plat, because it's a platted lot,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
it's not that big a project.
No, it's not. I think you've got a good point, and I understand all of that. I think that,
Which would
The-
mean, let me finish, which
Okay.
would mean that if we fund it here, we can do it.
okay,
And if RCDC can't do it because that's not city property,
okay,
that's where I'm going with that.
sure.
It's always easy to not spend money after you budgeted it, so, but I'm not, I think both of these are good projects. Great if you want to fund them and we can start working on them. If you don't, it's not, at least from where I sit, not a hill to die on, so it's whatever you want to do, council.
I just did want to make the point. I think it's a great project. I just, you know, RCDC's got $600,000. They can only spend it either on incentives for, commercial retail development, like down on Bee Caves Road, or on capital improvements in the parks. Just as a reminder, I know everyone here knows that, but just for anyone listening,
Yeah.
it's a reminder. And personal philosophy, is that the idea that we can affect commercial development on BKs by like giving some shopping center owner $500,000 as an incentive to redevelop, I just don't think is realistic in the marketplace. I don't think it's even good policy in general, just personally. But it's the law that's all they can spend that on, or capital improvements. So I'd love to see it get spent on capital improvements in the park. And there's been some movement in RCDC's philosophy in that regard. And I think that if we bring them good projects like this, that they're more likely to support them.
In my view, it's a timing issue. And we didn't get it through the RCDC budget last month. So if we want to get the projects done for sure, we'd approve this and then we'd pound on them for the money.
What I'd like to see is the city design something a little bit better that we could get cost estimates on, so that we could go to them with something specific. Because if we just tell them trail
There-
rehab,
There's a bid for, there is a firm bid for the 155-2.
155.
I will say though, just drawing something does usually, like, we've done a pretty good job of getting stuff for free, but if the discussion is let's not put any dollars in this for this project, but let's go spend money to draw something, like I would say, even if you don't do 50, then let's put something in there to try to have some dollars to go design something. Yes, sir.
I'm for no more spending out of the general fund. I'd like to save the money for next year. It looks like we got some potentially big expenses coming up. I think having the buffer would be good, so that's where I stand on this. Even though it's probably a great
It's a good
project.
segue. I like the fact that you kept us moving there, so that's good. All right, so on that note, what's your desire, council, on 100-55-1? I don't have to take a motion, but I'm happy to take one if somebody wants to make it.
Would that be considered a capital project? Could RCDC even fund that?
Capital project,
Yes,
yes.
Perhaps if we
it is definitely.
have
Yeah,
the,
I believe-
Landscaping and trail refurbishment,
it's
that's
our
like
land and all that.
maintenance.
Well, it depends, I will tell you that every day I own and manage apartment complexes, that we have to make a decision whether we're gonna qualify something as a capital project or a maintenance project. And when we have a big landscape refresh project, then our council let us call it a capital project. If it's if it's new landscaping, that is. And on the trail deal, it's like if you're talking about putting down more granite, that's not gonna be capital. But if you're talking about rebuilding the border of the trail and pouring concrete, that's capital.
Right. I think it could creatively be done,
Yeah.
appropriately be done.
Well,
But again, I'm flexible. What do y'all want to do on 100-55-1?
We're on straw poll part, right? So,
Yes, we are straw
I mean,
poll.
I could see funding the trail thing because we don't have a bid on it yet, and it could be developed, and it'll have to come back for approval later. But the tree thing, I think RCDC has the money to fund. They've budgeted enough to cover it. And I support that project.
Did anyone take it to RCDC for last month's, their budget meeting?
it did not, but they earmarked $50,000 for next year.
For whatever.
For capital improvement projects in the park.
Yeah.
And that was my only, again, I'm sort of throwing myself under the bus here, but 100-55-1, that's really that's on me. I just thought it was a good idea.
I think it is
but
a good
I
idea.
think it's
I
a good
agree.
idea,
I think it is a
too.
good idea too. But the rest of my statement is 100-55-2 actually went through the park commission and they recommended it. So
And there's a bid.
they actually put some work into it. So my only point is, if you're gonna do something, I think an acknowledgement of their work under 100-55-2 is probably more important than an acknowledgement of my,
Well, but
whether it's a good idea or not.
But there's money budgeted in RCDC that would cover that project. And Brooke, to Councilmember Brown's point, if some of that trail work is not on city property, we may need to not let RCDC do it. I don't know.
Exactly.
I have a proposal.
I'm all ears.
I propose that we budget $50,000 to be spent on the tree project. And if RCDC funds it, then we spend that $50,000 on the right-of-way and the trail refurbishment. So it's a $50,000
Total.
budget item instead of 100,000, and that will get us all to push RCDC to fund it.
And ideally, we could get them to fund both of them and we don't
Yeah,
spend it.
exactly.
I think that is a wonderful compromise.
Thank you. That would be my proposal.
Well, I'm against it then. I'm just kidding. That sounds like a good idea.
We'll
So
make you dig the holes.
I'm going to take that as a motion.
All of us.
I'm going to, we will figure out, I'm going to take that as a motion. We will figure out how to combine these at a later date. But I'm going to straw poll on a combo 100-55-1, 100-55-2 for a total of 50,000. And then we'll figure out how to make all that work. And if you, for your purposes, if you want to just put them in as 25 and 25, and then we'll figure out how to combine them. Oh, well, I'm not going to presume what
That's
they're about
really
to
not
do.
my motion.
Yeah, 50 for both.
Well, then pick one that you would. Oh, for the tree,
50
for the tree.
tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they
0 for
approve
the
it,
other one.
put it in at
Right.
50, and we'll just figure out how to roll it over. Okay. So that's the combo motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Being 4 ayes, 1 nay, the modified approval prevails. So put that in. Okay, then that gets us to what I do think is an important one, and this is the 100-65-1. This is additional tree trimming services. Again, in the base budget, we do have a baseline that we have that we've put in for the last few years to do some of this tree trimming. You've probably seen this going on in the community right now. We're spending those dollars that you budgeted last year. But again, in our initial assessment of that project, there's a lot more of it than than what we truly realize, especially once you get down some of the smaller streets and that sort of thing. So I do think this is an important one. I think we're making good progress. Just so everyone knows, we are trying to work we're letting the neighbors know. We're trying to work with them if they have a problem or don't want something trimmed. It is needed. It's necessary that we do this trimming, but we are trying to be very respectful of people's wishes to the extent that we can. So anyway, I think this one's an important one. I'm happy to try to figure out how to move some of that over to streets. I think that's a worthy idea. I will say I don't want us to be too dependent on our street funds for the tree trimming, because I do think that once we get caught up with what we're trying to do on the streets, that it looks like 150, which is roughly what we think comes in per year in revenues. I think that's still going to be a little short in the out years. I think we're going to probably settle in around 200 to 250 to really keep a good continuing year-to-year street maintenance program going on. So I don't want to get in too much of a habit of putting those tree trimming dollars into that, but you're the appropriator, so we can do it however you want.
So I can't read those numbers up there. Where are we at?
Ms.
On the
Wayman,
on
tell
the
us where we
general
are.
fund?
In the general fund for the posted no new revenue rate, we are in the red, 8,500, so negative 8,500. For the actual no new revenue rate, we are at 16,623, and for the voter approval rate, we are at 123,758.
Well, then I propose we leave the $50,000 in the general fund and go forward with that.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion. So we've got a motion to adopt 100-65-1. Is there further discussion on tree trimming? Yes, sir.
I mean, I like tree trimming. I think you guys are doing a great job. I just looking out next year and want to have a bigger budget. So I'm still think that either we should take something else off that we've approved earlier, or I can't support that.
Nope, that's totally fair, and I appreciate, and that's why we have the little chart. What would we? This is not. I'm not going to ask you to take this vote quite yet, but go pretend like you're approving it, and tell us what would be left in the
The voter approval.
general fund voter approval rate.
That would leave us with 73,758.
Okay, so if you were to approve the motion as presented, you would still be leaving yourself, what was it, 74? About 74,000, which to your point, Mr. Robinson, would get you a significant way there toward what we believe the replacement costs in the out years of 25, 26. We anticipate that to be around 117, so you would be a little short of 117, but you'd be well on your way to that 117. So
So can I ask a question real quick? Just so, like, I was just going down on what sheet is this? This is the projected long-term asset replacement
Yes, sir.
10-year plan. Down at the very bottom, that's where I was just kind of going off that number where all funds total.
mhm.
Maybe, okay, I see what you're saying. So the 117 is where you, I got you. Okay, because we could get, I was looking at the 146. And
Gotcha.
thinking that, but again, not breaking down that we have the different funds.
Yeah, that
Okay.
all funds always gets
And
mentioned.
we'll have 50,000 coming back if we get,
If that's true,
Yeah,
that's
if we
true.
get
That's a great point. So
RCDC
if we can
to
get
fund
RCDC to do that, then you've got that coming in.
capital
So
improvements to the park.
you're probably in
Yeah,
pretty good
That's why I
shape.
would just take the park off.
Yeah, no,
and
that's
just
a
go
fair.
for
I
it.
mean, that's a
Well,
fair
it's
point.
not a done deal.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Yeah. You got to give me something to save money on throughout the year anyway. So. Then I can come back and tell you what a great job we did.
It's not I know that the trees deal isn't a done deal, but I do have a concern about putting it in the general fund for Alex's reasons, but also because I'm afraid it gives RCDC an out if we have it, in our budget, and they're gonna, I've listened to enough of their meetings that it's gonna be, why should we budget for this if the city's already budgeted for it? And so I would rather leave the pressure on RCDC to fund it, but I know we've already discussed it, but just coming back and sharing that thought.
Well, I think the argument for RCDC is we feel we're either damned because we budgeted for it or we're damned because we haven't already approved it. And so I think this shows enough interest at the council level to do this project that they should fund it, is the way I'm looking at it.
But
I think maybe it would
I'll give
help-
you an opportunity for anybody to undo anything here in a minute.
Excuse
But let's.
Excuse my curse word, but
And,
No, I liked it.
and we might even combine it with, if it's appropriate for this meeting, to send maybe a resolution of support for that project to
I'd love
RCDC.
that.
We
Look at you
already
guys
voted
working
on that
together.
one, and we're supposed to be voting on this next one.
That's right. Thank you for bringing me back, Mayor Pro Tem. So on 100-65-1, we do have a motion for additional tree trimming services by Ms. Hudson. Further discussion, not hearing any. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
There being 4 ayes, 1 nay, 100-65-1 is approved. So approve that one. And if you would, Ms. Wayman, tell us where we landed.
So for the posted no new, I'm probably off. For the posted no new revenue rate, we would be in the negative about 59,000. For the actual no new revenue rate, in the negative about 33,000. And at the voter approval rate for the general fund, this would leave us a remaining 73,758. The water fund would leave us at 235,387. The street department would leave us with 394,579, and in the wastewater fund, we would be left with $98,980.
Okay, council. I think this is a really solid. I think it's a conservative budget. I think it's good stewardship of the dollars. I will open it up in a minute to offer you an opportunity to make any changes. But I think as it stands, this is really a reasonable and calculated budget proposal. It does leave you at the voter approval rate, but I think you've got a very reasonable argument to make to any of your constituents that the exceptional items that you approved are all worthy, and that most importantly, you're trying to make sure that you go into the next budget cycle for the 25-26 year with the appropriate funds to continue to balance this budget going forward without having to go above the voter approval rate. Again, I'll just point out, we spend a lot of times talking about these rates and the dollar amounts that are here for your discretionary spending. I would point out that it's only $130,000 in hard dollars and real dollars. It's only $130,000 between the posted no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate. So, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a great deal of money, regardless. So, that's sometimes easy to lose sight of.
And that's why I asked about the average home value, because the difference between those two rates is $12.50 a month on the average
Right.
home.
Yeah, it's
Good-
pretty
good
reasonable.
point.
Taxes.
Good point.
And most of that increase too, we did do some back of the napkin, you know, most of the increase, even in addition to what you're talking about, most of that is from the voter approved bond that got rolled in that you've already issued the debt on, and also a significant portion of it is actually from the value increases. So even of that $12, most of it is something that the voters have already weighed in on. So.
So remind me again, the debt, that number is baked into this rate already? So it's not like we'll have another line item for?
Any that you've issued is baked in. So
Okay.
anything you've already issued in terms of the debt, it's baked in, yeah. Okay, anyone wishing to make changes to the items that have been approved?
I would move that we take the 50,000 out for the parks, so that we can leave that on RCDC's doorstep, especially since they've already got 50,000, they've gotten the budget.
Okay, you have a motion to undo the combination that you approved earlier, the combo between 155-1 and 155-2. We've already talked about it, so I'm gonna let you revote, if that is what you'd like to do. All those in favor, okay, so
What are
all
we
those in
doing?
favor say aye, and
We
you would
don't
be
have a
voting.
second.
I have a sec, I'm
Well,
seconding
we've
right
been
here.
straw polling the whole time.
In favor
I
of-
expect that this is gonna go the same way it went before, but we'll see. Maybe not. So, if you vote yes, you'll be voting for Mr. Glasheen's motion to undo what you did on the 50,000 from before.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
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 You sure that's what you want to
Yeah,
do?
oh,
No,
you're
Undoing
voting
it.
for the motion, okay, got it.
Why are we undoing what we just did?
Because we were looking at the whole budget in totality
Because you're
at the
getting
end.
to
It's like-
the end, and so if they don't like the end number, it's a chance to go back and adjust
It's
that.
like you're in the checkout at the grocery. You get to take stuff out of the basket.
But just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we spend it either.
Just because it's not in the cart doesn't mean we have to buy it.
I agree.
either.
I like what you did the first time, but I said I'd give you an opportunity to undo anything once you saw the final numbers. So do with it what you want.
All right,
So,
I want to try to vote again or what?
so if you're voting yes, you're voting with Mr. Glasheen, and you're undoing
Take out trees
to,
for the
to
park.
take out trees for the park.
And make RCDC,
Yeah,
yeah, we're not pulling
yes.
trees
We
out of
can't
the park.
make them
And-
do
And
that.
assume that
Yeah,
they're
we
gonna pay
can,
for it.
but we can actually, but, the question is, I mean, no, I was saying the same thing, but anyway, whether we'd want to make them do it.
I hope our RCDC liaison now has all the arguments to make this argument.
Yes,
if
yes,
this
there you
fail-
go.
If this
Well,
passes.
That's Phil and I,
Okay.
so we will.
I'm going to take this one at a time because this is a little bit confusing. So you're undoing what you did before. This is Mr. Glasheen's motion. Ms. Brown.
As I understand the motion, we are actually undoing both sides of the combo. The
That's correct.
50,000 plus the
That's
combo
correct.
for the 100-30 100-55-1.
And as I understand it, you're probably wanting to vote no.
I want to vote no on that.
Okay. Alec,
Yes.
you're a yes.
Yes.
Kevin's a yes. Ooh, I see a swing vote coming. What do you want to do?
Yes.
And you got a yes. And Sarah?
No.
And you know. So now we're 3-2, 3 in favor, 2 no's. So the previously adopted combination of 100-55-1 and 100-55-2 is undone. Will you undo that? Okay. So that's now not approved. Okay, now tell them what they've won.
The general fund posted no new revenue tax rate would be negative 8,585. The actual no new revenue tax rate, we would be to the good 16,623, and with the voter approval rate, we would be to the good 123,758.
Which would cover next year's projected, which is where I think you were trying to get to. Okay.
That's a good idea.
With that, council, we will go roll these into the budget. We will roll these into the final proposed budget that will be before you at the next,
The September 18th.
at the September 18th meeting, not the
Not the
September
special.
4th. So
Correct.
we will get these rolled in, get them all finalized in your final budget that will come back to you for final approval. And then you will have a final opportunity to make your final decision on the adopted rate at that time as well. So if you'll recall, you adopt the budget and then you immediately adopt whatever
Tax rate.
tax rate to cover those expenditures after that. So that will all happen at the September 18th meeting. What are we doing at the September 4th meeting? Oh,
We're holding
public
the
hearing.
hearings.
So on the September 4th meeting, you'll have the public hearing on the rates themselves. Any questions? Good workshop. Sorry we went a little overtime, but yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, on this issue we've just had, if RCDC approves the trees at their meeting between now and next when we vote on this in September, can that happen?
They would need to hear it as a project and then pass their resolution making it a project, and then the city council would need to approve the resolution. I don't know that we have enough time. I would need to go back and double check the noticing requirements. So I don't know that we would have enough time to get it into their currently approved budget. They could amend their budget without a project at their next meeting if they meet between now and the September city council meeting. But at this time, they have approved it. But they can always amend their budget at any meeting going
So the
forward.
steps are you have to draft a project and then have the project approved, and there's some kind of, what's the notice period?
I don't know, Charlie, is there a noticing requirement for EDC projects?
Depends on
I think it depends on what the project is. We would have to get a better grip on what the actual, it depends on under which statute it falls, which the project would fall under. So we would need to understand that before. So we would need to develop a project, check it against statute, and then,
I will say also, you would have ample time, even if that process didn't line up with this budget. If you end up adopting the voter approval rate, you would still have the dollars to be able to move back in with the budget amendment.
Amend the budget,
Yeah,
because we haven't had a decision by RCDC.
right.
right.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
The only place that would be a problem is if you did a lower rate and you didn't leave yourself that flexibility, then you would maybe have a problem.
I have a question on that process. If when you say they have to develop a project, all they need to do is describe it in sufficient detail for us to then approve it and for administration to have direction to go get bids, right?
Yes.
Okay, so really the description that we've already got from the Park Commission is sufficient description, or even in more general terms, to plant trees along the side of between the parking lot and the playfields is probably sufficient description for developing a project, is that
I'd say
right?
so. I'd say so.
And there's the bid.
And well, it's not helpful because it has to be rebid with
We would have
competitive
to do
bidding,
competitive bidding.
so if we if we get them to approve,
that
hang on
true?
just a second, please. If we get them to approve the project, like say in the next 30 days or something, and then it comes back, it still could come back to here in September, right, for approval? For both a budget amendment and a project approval?
So I'm trying to find it right now. I can't remember what section it applies to, but you have to, the PCDC, different corporation, sorry.
Or
Rollingwood
CDC.
Economic Development Corporation. They have to hold a public hearing. No special notice is required for that, just agenda notice that the public hearing is gonna be held. The only issue is you may have to wait 60 days to spend the funds, in order to give the citizens an opportunity to present a petition, to object to the use of those funds for that project. I just need to double check that.
And then it would
Okay,
take
so we'd
us,
miss the fall
no, we,
planting season.
well, yeah, that's not gonna happen anyway, because we have to get bids.
We have
We have to have competitive bids.
Is that correct?
If the Economic Development Corporation is doing the project, they're not obligated to comply with the Texas city procurement requirements. If the city's doing, depends how you
That's-
structure it.
It's
If
only
the
projects.
city's doing the project and they're gonna be reimbursed by EDC funds, the answer I would say is no.
And that-
If the city's doing the project and it's not being reimbursed by EDC funds, the answer is yes, you have to follow the procurement requirements.
But the procurement requirements are for projects over $50,000, correct?
Correct.
And so
And
the
I-
bid is less than $50,000.
Yes.
Well,
Right.
Ashley told me that 50,000 number's not correct. It was like
If it's
10,000.
between, if it's over if it's over 3,000, we still have to contact historically underutilized businesses. We have to contact 3 of them if it's between the 3,000 and 50,000. And if it's over 50,000, we have to do competitive bidding. So we still have to get additional bids, or at least solicit additional bids.
It just seems like it's good policy to me that we get other bids and not just, do this bid just because, it's somebody that one of the ladies on the park commission
That is
likes.
not true,
What's not true?
Councilmember Blash.
What's not true?
The qualifications for the person who bid, we don't need to get into that. You don't need to denigrate.
I didn't denigrate anybody. I'm just saying that if we get one bid that was picked by
That's,
people on the park commission, that's not sufficient to be fiscally responsible, and that we should get more than one bid on a project. That's all I'm saying.
all right.
Okay, all great points. Do we have anything more on the exceptional items?
Well, not at this time.
Awesome. Thank you, council. Thank you for your work. I want to say thank you again to our great staff, and Ashley and Abel. They've worked very hard on all
Yes.
of these documents and have done a great job in keeping me straight and showing up to keep me straight with you. Thank you all for your hard work. I think you're on the way to adopting a very fiscally conservative budget that still gives you ample room to do some good things for the city. So I look forward to bringing that final budget back to you and having giving you an opportunity to adopt those rates to make sure you can pay for it. With that, council, we will take a 5-minute recess and look forward to seeing you again in 5 minutes. Stand at ease. City Council will reconvene at 7:35 PM, and we are back on the agenda, Council, having concluded our budget workshop earlier. I think Ms. Wayman just passed out a final copy for you of all the exceptional items, so those are for your records and for your consideration at the next budget workshop or council meeting. With that, I will quickly go back, since we do have new folks that have joined us for the regular time of our meeting, and I'll go back and reopen public comment for anyone wishing to make comments on items not on the agenda. We have anyone? Shanti, come on up.
Hi, Mayor, council members, staff. I have two public comments to make, one that I prepared for and one that I just remembered is important to talk about.
That I asked her to.
Ronald Hudson, Dr. Ronald Hudson, who was incidentally Sarah Hudson's professor at UT, and he was a civil engineer. He passed away at the age of 91 last Monday, and he was born in May 17th, 1933. And he grew up in Cameron, Texas, and his wife Martha and I have been walking buddies for 25, 30 years. But the reason I'm here is also to tell y'all that I think he had a dean of civil engineering, professor emeritus status at UT in the civil engineering department. And while we were doing our street resurfacing, he played a very important role. I was a street liaison at the time, and we were keen on making sure that the county who was paving our streets would add the right amount of asphalt, the 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch or whatever that was at the time. And Dr. Ronald Hudson, who was already in his late 80s, mid 80s, he would go down on his knees, bad knees, and measure and take photographs and report back to the city. And he found some places where that asphalt had not been filled to the extent it should have been. So he's given us so many hours of free service when we were doing our street projects. And he has consulted with street maintenance projects all over the world, in Africa, South America, all over the world. I'm sorry I don't have it all together, but I just wanted to make sure I acknowledged, and his memorial service is on next Saturday, is it 31st, I think, whatever, Saturday or Sunday. Okay, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I keep a binder full of all these things, of all the, our favorite, not all our people from Rollingwood, whenever they pass away, I keep it as a reminder of the lives they led in our city. So that is there, but I didn't bring it. Okay, so today, I'm here to present something as part of my history sharing comments to do the following. I may embarrass you, Mr. Mayor,
Well, you
didn't
tell me this was part of the.
I don't say anything. It's public comment. It's not on the agenda.
It's true, and I can't comment. I can't even defend myself.
Okay, so I want to quote you, Mayor Massingle. In March of 2022, and I have a hard copy at
Making me
home.
very nervous.
I keep everything, sorry. A few short months after you stepped in to take over the mayorship, you wrote, and I quote, "Our approach for the next 12 months will be to manage each new project armed with a smile and actionable solutions." You may not remember this, but you went on to say,
I agree with it so far. So.
Anyway, and I quote, you went on to say, "I am inspired by the caring spirit of our community, and that spirit should energize us all to want to serve one another each day. And I want to let you know you're keeping your promise, and we applaud you. And I just watched you conduct this very difficult budget meeting, and I've watched it every year since you became mayor. You're doing a wonderful job."
Thank you.
Now, Mayor Massingle, Mayor Pro Tem Hudson, and Council Members Brown, Robinson, Glasheen, and McDuffie, you answered the call of our community to reestablish peace and tranquility with your focus on teamwork and consensus building. No drama, no protests, no petitions for 3 years now. You have pursued projects that serve to unite us, and you have, for the most part, been collegial and respectful of each other's pet priorities in serving the community. You are doing the people's work just like you promised you would. We are grateful. Mayor Massingill has skillfully assembled a team of city personnel, we call them Team Rollingwood, who operate in unison, everybody, okay? And that is a huge part of your leadership success for all of you. The citizens gave each of you a mandate to govern, and in addition approved 2 major bond issues for 5.3 for infrastructure and 2.5 for a new city hall and an emergency services building to be located next to City Hall. You have been able to accomplish the following, and in no particular order: Google Fiber, electronic water meters, major drainage projects, park improvements, and a new commercial code to enhance the business community on Bee Cave Road, to name just a few. Excellent work, but I'm also here to tell you what it was like, so why people should know why I appreciate what you're doing now. August 25th of 2021 was a tipping point in our city's history. That is the day the citizens reclaimed their park and said, enough is enough, to the previous 3-year history of mayoral and council actions that were near calamitous to the residents. Sarah and Gavin were part of the old guard, but took decisions to safeguard, pun intended, and they continue to do so. I thank you very much. For the benefit of people who have not lived in this community for any length of time, I have just 4 examples of how our community responded to mitigate the threats to our property values and our shared spaces, like our park, during those 3 years before this council took charge. I'm going down this very quickly. In May of 2020, mayor and council approved relocating, not this mayor, the previous one, relocating the police department to a residential property at Vale and Rollingwood Drive, and borrowed $2 million as notes for funding of that purchase. And this was done over the unanimous protest or disapproval by the P&Z to change the zoning code from residential to governmental. Guess what? 182 residents from 111 homes who signed a petition to end the 24/7 police outpost project. That happened. Our community came together. Well, 3 more, and then I'll stop. May through August of 2020, council approved hiring a consultant for $60,000 to create a comprehensive plan for the commercial corridor. By August, a draft plan included 3- and 4-story mixed-use buildings, the kind of apartment type. Citizen outrage was instantaneous. 270 residents from 140 homes protested, and Save Rollingwood signs popped up all over the city. Well, that didn't happen. That stopped. We came together again. Then, in July of 2021, 2 members of the council actively supported having a dedicated dog park as per the park master plan that shows the off-leash dog park on the park master plan as a small area near the cliffside of the park. Over 170 dog owners from 108 homes petitioned the city and won. The current council has made it possible for dog owners and ball players to share the fields with an amicable compromise. So, one more feather. 2021, May through August, 200 residents from 119 homes signed a petition joined by the homeowners including those living directly across the park, to oppose the lease of our parkland for a restaurant. In July, and we got the paper, over 50 of us residents, I was one of them, we had a sign, Save Rollingwood Park. To protest the restaurant in the park, instead, we asked, please relocate it in the commercial corridor. Well, 2 council members who insisted on approving the restaurant are no longer on the council. The mayor and city administrator resigned in November 2021. Residents of Rollingwood succeeded in saving our park. So, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. You're all being watched, but just know that when you do a good job and you do it for the good of our community, we totally appreciate it. See, there's been no protests, nothing in the last 3 years, which speaks for the leadership of our mayor and each one of you. And I want you all to know that I really appreciate it, and I know a lot of people appreciate it. So keep up your good work. And thank you, Mayor, for indulging me to share this history, even at the cost of embarrassing you.
Thank you, Shanti. With that, we'll entertain any additional comments from the public on items. Yes, sir.
I promise I'll make this quick. Okay. My name is Leonard Cantu, Senior Corporal here at Rollingwood Police. Been here about 2 years. 2 reasons why I came to Rollingwood. I was a police chief for 7 years at another agency before I came over here. I've been assisting Rollingwood Police with ACL since 2012, and helping out as far as like with Rollingwood Night Out each year. One of the things that always caught my eye was the overwhelming support of the community. I saw it every year. And I would tell, at the time, Lieutenant Munoz, if they ever make you chief, I will leave my position as a chief to come work for you because, number one, I trust in her leadership, I believe in her leadership, and the overwhelming support from the community. So I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of that, you are being watched. We thank you so much for everything that y'all do, but the council, mayor, the community is one of the main reasons why I came over here. So I just wanted to let you know that. And I've been here 2 years, and I've got to work closely with the city staff, amazing. I work closely with Nikki. Actually took over code enforcement now, and public works, everybody. I love it here. Fixing to be 2 years in the 24th. So just wanted to let y'all know, thank y'all for everything that y'all do.
Thank you. Happy to have you, and you're doing a
Thank
great
you.
job. All the PD. Okay, any other items? Anyone wishing to make comments on items not on the agenda? Hearing none, we will move on to our public hearing. Agenda item number 3, public hearing, discussion, and possible action on a city-initiated rezoning of 5100 Rollingwood Drive, parcel 107772 from the Commercial District C to the Residential District R. Council, you're well aware and familiar with this agenda item. You've heard it and discussed it before. You sent it to Planning and Zoning. It is back before you this evening, having received a recommendation to approve from Planning and Zoning. And with that, I needed a note. I opened the public hearing for this item at 7:49 p.m. and happy to take anyone wishing to make comment. Anyone registered? Okay. Well, we'll now close the public comment also at 7:49 p.m. Agenda item number 3 is before you, council. Again, we've talked about it. Happy to take a motion. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve ordinance number 2024-08-21-03, amending the official zoning map by rezoning 5100 Rollingwood Drive from commercial to the residential district.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. And you're very welcome. And I meant to recognize you as being here, and thank you for being here, but it was going so well, I didn't want to slow it up for you. So.
Appreciate your attention to this.
You're very welcome. Thanks for bringing
You're
it to our
very welcome.
attention. Yep.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we will move on to agenda item number 4, still under public hearing. It's public hearing, discussion, and possible action on an ordinance amending the zoning code to prohibit the rental of amenities in the residential zoning district. Again, council, this is an item you've heard before. You send it to planning and zoning. Planning and zoning send it back to you with a recommendation to approve. I will open the public hearing at 7:51 p.m. Anyone wishing to testify on agenda item number 4 who is registered? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:51 p.m. And agenda item number 4 is before you, council. Again, this is an item you talked about before, and it does have unanimous, I believe unanimous, approval from planning and zoning. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I would move approval of ordinance number 2024-08-21-04, amending the Article 2, Division 2, Section 107-69, to provide for the prohibition of rental of residential amenities.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown and a second by Mr. McDuffie. Is there further discussion? Hearing none.
So,
Yes,
a
ma'am.
quick question.
Mm-hmm.
The definition of amenity says used for recreational purposes. Is it just for recreational purposes? I just didn't know if that was, what if somebody wants to rent a backyard for a wedding? It's not a recreational purpose.
Do you want to respond, council, or I can respond to that? Okay. We talked about that. Here, the use of an amenity for a commercial purpose is already prohibited because the residential zoning code prohibits all uses other than those expressly permitted. So use for a commercial purpose would not be allowed. So the use for recreational purposes is the concern that was being raised, that someone could rent their pool out on Swimply or rent their pickleball court or rent some other amenity for recreation. And I think if you couple this with the fact that any commercial use is already prohibited, then we've covered all the bases.
Great explanation.
Well, I'm just wondering, is there not any use other than commercial or recreational?
Yeah, what's a wedding?
That's
Like,
commercial.
like is a wedding
I
commercial?
think if it'd be
But
rented out.
If you rented it for a wedding, it would be a commercial
But
use.
if you rent it for a swimming party,
That
how
would
is
be
that
rec-
not commercial?
That's recreational.
Oh, that's the gray area. Is it recreational or commercial? You could call it commercial, but it's, now it would be covered under both.
What if it's a dance party?
It's a belt and suspenders.
Yes, that is the appropriate term, belt and suspenders.
I was just wanting to make sure that we didn't have loopholes in here that allowed somebody to go, oh, well, it's not for recreation, so I can rent it out.
Yeah, and we can, you can always come back and change it, but I do think this probably catches the vast majority of it. I'm not saying that you couldn't think of some extenuating circumstance,
We
but
at least think right now it covers everything, and if something were to occur, something that we haven't foreseen so far pops up, then we'll address that then.
I think you're well ahead of the trend line on this one anyway. So. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to presentations. Pulling up agenda item number 5, annual MS4 presentation from K. Freeze and Associates. I think we have a couple of folks here from K. Freeze. I will recognize Ms. Wayman to give you a quick update and recognize whoever she sees fit.
Yes, we have Maritza Almada and A.B. Salinas here from K. Freese and Associates. It is a requirement of our MS4 permit to have an annual presentation to City Council about the purpose of the MS4 permit, and so they are here to give that today. Maritza, would y'all like to share your screen? Or would
Yes,
you-
I'll
okay,
start.
I will allow that.
Okay.
You should be able to share now, Maritza.
Okay, let me see. I should be sharing. Can you see it? now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I haven't had a chance to speak in one of these meetings, so I just want to introduce myself. My name is Maritza Almada, and I serve as the city's main point of contact with K. Freeze and Associates. We've composed a brief presentation, as Ashley said, on the MS4 permit, which stands for the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. And this is an annual educational presentation required as part of the MS4 permit. There is no action required at the end of this, just for educational purposes. Okay, so what is the MS4? So an MS4 is a publicly owned and or operated stormwater drainage system, and these are things such as storm drains, ditches, curbs and gutters, or any other similar means of collecting runoff that do not directly tie downstream into a wastewater collection system. The purpose of the MS4 is to prevent pollutants from entering any storm sewer systems, prevent the degradation of the receiving waters, and all of this is with the aim of protecting both the human health and wildlife. Some of the samples of these pollutants are sediment from construction sites, oil from vehicles that can find their way into the sewer systems, and spills from roadway accidents. So broad overview of how the permitting works is that TCEQ issues a general permit to discharge into the surface waters under the guidelines of the EPA Clean Water Act and the Texas Water Code, which we've identified, which specifically here, and TCEQ outlines specific requirements to comply with these permits. It also gives the compliance authority to the city rather than requiring each small project to submit directly to TCEQ. As part of the compliance for the MS4 permit, Rollingwood has created a stormwater management program with annual reporting and tracking to ensure the compliance with the TCEQ requirements. The stormwater management program is required to be updated every 5 years, with the last time it being submitted and approved in 2019. So this means we were up for resubmission this year, and the city had submitted to TCEQ in January 2024, and we've been checking the status of the permit renewal, which is currently still under review, but we're expecting to be approved later this month. And then on this next slide, I'm gonna talk about the MCMs, which I'll be using for short, which stand for minimum control measures, and BMPs, which stand for best management practices for managing the quality of any stormwater discharge. And these are steps that we are tracking and need to be met for the management program. Oops. So there are a lot of items that we need to constantly keep track of, but we've summarized them into 5 smaller ones, and I'll give a couple of examples within each one. So the first MCM that we have is the public education outreach and involvement. That includes items such as this presentation to the community and council, distributing educational flyers to citizens, and sharing information into the city website, and other items similar to that. The second MCM item is illicit discharge detection and elimination. This includes training city staff to help them identify those illicit discharges, as well as enforcing penalties for any discharges that are noticed within the community. The third MCM is construction site storm water runoff, which includes site plan reviews, reviewing that we have used the correct erosion control details, and inspections as needed. The fourth item is post-construction storm water management. This includes inspections to ensure everything is constructed as per plan and conforms with ordinances, and reviewing any zoning changes as needed. The fifth and last MCM is pollution prevention and good housekeeping. This includes items such as maintaining city vehicles, street sweeping, and cleaning and maintaining storm sewer ditches regularly and as needed. So, in summary, K-Freeze and Associates has been working closely with the City of Rollingwood to comply with every aspect of the MS4 permit each year, and will continue providing these yearly educational presentations. And in 5 years, 2029 will be the next time that the stormwater management program will need to be updated and resubmitted again. So now I will open it up for questions. Benny.
Thank you for the presentation, our annual MS4 update. Any questions on MS4? Okay. Thank you for
Great, thank you.
bringing us into compliance. Anything else, Ms. Wayman?
That is all.
All right, with that, we will move off of agenda item number 5 and move on to agenda item number 6, update from Univista regarding the IT services transition. Recognize first Ms. Wayman to give us a quick opening, and then I believe we have someone here from Univista.
Yes, in late 2023, the City Council went out for RFPs for IT services and ultimately selected Univista. Univista currently services our police department. Previously, we had 2 separate vendors, one for the police department and one for the rest of the city. We are almost done with the transition fully over to Univista, and we have Rob Eccles here from Univista to give a quick update on that project.
Hey, Mayor, Council. Thanks for having me. This is one of the times that I actually get to be excited about coming and talking about some of the things that we've discovered. Did the information make it into the packet?
Yes,
Great.
there's a letter in the packet from
So
Univista.
we don't have to go. You don't have to read the letter. But one of the things that we decided to do, well, several things we decided to do. We wanted to do it in the best interest of the city. A lot of managed service providers, a lot of IT companies out there will kind of really try to keep everything under their purview, specifically because they can pretty much control costs. One of the things we're looking at is we are not going to take the data that the city uses for the primary core systems of Encode for court and RMS for the PD side. We're actually migrating that directly to the vendor, which is Tyler Technologies. After looking at what the city was spending as a whole, everything falls under that same dollar amount that they were spending, so we're not spending more than we were monthly. So that's a really good win. We have one, per se, throat to choke. So if something happens, we can go directly to that vendor and say, hey, everything is under you, all the data is with you, what are we looking at, what's the possibility? We still get to liaison on behalf of the city in terms of the infrastructure, but we get to move things progressively forward. As we started having conversations with the vendor, one of the things that came up is they said, well, sure, you can stick with your plan and move the data into the Microsoft cloud. But just so you know, in a couple of years, we're going to require that either everything falls under us or we're going to have another solution in place. And we said, well, what is that going to cost? And I said, well, it may probably roughly about $40,000. I said, so why would we wait 2 years and spend another $40,000? Why don't we look at doing it right now and how much that cost savings would be? The vendor at that point in time said, well, it wasn't planned, but if you do it now, we'll just charge you what the fees would be for the monthly service and waive the migration cost. So we're actually moving steps forward and moving the infrastructure as a whole. It's taken a little bit longer than we wanted. Our original estimate was 3 to 4 months to have all of this migration done, but by doing these smaller steps, we're going to be set up better long-term for the city as a whole.
That's great. Thank you, A, for the update. Thanks for taking it upon yourself to come
Yes.
keep us up to speed. That was, your idea along with staff's, and we appreciate you doing that. I think
course.
we've been very pleased
Absolutely.
with the progress and with the work you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate
Thank
you having me.
much.
Any
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, with that, we'll move off of agenda item number 6 and on to the consent agenda. You have the I'm going to knock off, this is short, I'm going to knock off 7 and 8 so that I can have a discussion with you about it. So I'm pulling off agenda item 7 and 8. We'll just adopt those individually here in a moment. I just wanted to point out, Council, I'm going to ask, and I just wanted to let you know this because you will see maybe a little bit of a different format going forward with some of our agenda items. With some of our minutes. And feel free, Counselor, to weigh in on this, but the real point of our minutes, and for any government requirement to keep minutes, is to really keep up with, in an official document, keep up with what agenda item is there, what motions and actions are taken, and what the vote count is on those motions and actions, along with a little bit of, discussion was had, some simple explanation in those minutes. We, for a long time now, have archived and kept all of our meetings in their entirety online so that they're searchable and can be seen. We have and we've kind of talked about this in the past and tried to make some moves to streamline our minutes process, but the sheer workload on our staff to have to compile those minutes and the way we've sort of allowed them to become almost a transcript of the meeting has been difficult, to say the least, on our staff. So I've asked them to go ahead and make sure that we're adhering to the letter of the law, that we're keeping, good, solid records on exactly what items we're on the agendas, what the motions are in specific motions, and what those actions are on those motions. But you'll see a more streamlined set of minutes coming before you, and I wanted you to understand what the rationale, what that's all about. So we're still making sure that we adhere to the letter of the law, but if anyone wants to go back and review the meeting, we'll still have those archived in their entirety. So, with that, I will entertain a motion on agenda items 7 and 8. They are before you.
We're doing them individually?
Yes, individually.
Okay, move approval of agenda item number 7, which is the minutes from the July 17th, 2024 City Council meeting.
You have a motion by Ms. Hudson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a
But
motion.
I do have a proposed amendment.
You got it.
And I do too.
Okay. I have a motion by Ms. Hudson, a second by Ms. Brown. Recognize Ms. Brown first for her proposed amendment.
Okay, this would be the discussion of item number 2. I pulled this out of my packet, and I'm not sure what page it is. Let me see.
Yeah, that's one of my comments is like, hopefully the minutes will not be as long going forward, but could we get page numbers on them? Because there's no page numbers on them, and it's
Yes.
kind of a problem.
Yes. Yes and yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 3, paragraph 3, the second sentence says, Councilmember Brooke Brown stated that LCRA insisted on the city taking on the responsibility of the grinder pumps. I would like to amend that to read, Councilmember Brooke Brown stated that LCRA insisted on taking on the responsibility of the grinder pumps. That was when LCRA owned the system. Taking on the responsibility of the grinder pumps when the system was built, comma, and the pumps transferred to the city when it bought the system, period.
I think we have that, and we will, if there's not objection, the amendment is adopted. Are you good with that? Okay. Since they're her comments, I'm not gonna argue. Sarah, did you have something additional?
I did, and this is just because it's confusing the way it's presented right now. In the call call budget workshop? Anyway, at the very beginning, on page 1, it says present members, and it lists everybody and includes Alec Robinson. And then when we get down
Yeah, I showed it present.
multiple pages down here, page 3, right before the public comments, it says Councilmember Alec Robinson joined the meeting at 7:31. So
Thank you for catching that. We will,
it seems like we should take him off
Reflect
at the
that.
beginning
Right,
Yeah.
or we'll reflect underneath that he joined the meeting at
or
7:31.
something. Just, yeah, because it's confusing that we said he was here and then we said later that he showed up.
good catch.
It certainly wasn't here for the budget.
Got it.
No problem.
We'll make that amendment.
Okay, good catch. Anything else? That amendment is, without objection, that amendment's adopted. Anything else? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. I think 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. I'll accept a motion on agenda item number 8.
Move approval of the minutes from August 8th, 2024 special city council
You
meeting.
have a motion by Ms. Hudson. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Hudson, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion? Any changes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to the regular agenda. Pull up agenda item number 9. Discussion and possible action on a resolution authorizing the mayor to engage in discussions with various entities regarding the securement of water rights, a contract for wholesale water service, and procure professional services related thereto. Okay. This one's a fun one. So, sorry to throw this on the agenda last minute without, I mean, we've talked about it sort of individually, I think, over the years. It's come up a time or two in council discussions. I will back you up 2 years, council. So about 2 years ago, and some discussions that I was having at the time with Ms. Wayman, as well as Kay Freeze, we noticed, or we discussed at the time, I don't remember the exact details, but we discussed at the time that in our water contract with the city of Austin currently, there is a provision that essentially says by the year 2030, it is a potential that we need to go ahead and secure our own water rights. And so I'm not sure that it's a mandate necessarily, but it's something that they could require us to do by that year. So with that in mind, we opened up, I have some contacts at LCRA, as does Kay Freeze. So we opened up some discussion and dialogue with them a few years ago, just to kind of get the lay of the land, try to understand what the process looked like, what, if anyone else was having these discussions with them. We went to their offices, had a good meeting with them at that time, opened the dialogue, had a great discussion, kind of got a better sense, and they answered a few questions that Kay Freeze had. We also, around that same time, had some discussions with WCID number 10, who's also in a similar situation and had already had a few of these discussions on their own, and we have some contacts there, so we had that discussion with them as well to see sort of how they were handling it. I'll say that at the time, the general sentiment that I think we all left that meeting with was not much to see here. Yeah, it's something that you might need to do by the year 2030. You got plenty of time, and we've got plenty of water, and happy to visit with you. You don't need that much, so yeah, if you really feel the need to do it, go for it. If not, you've got plenty of time to have this discussion with us. And I think we all left that meeting, feeling pretty good about it. We did, I think we had the chair of the Utility Commission call into that meeting, so he's just had eyes on it and could hear what they had to say as well. I think we all agreed leaving that there wasn't really a huge need for us to pursue anything at that time. Since then, for whatever reason, it was good that we were sort of first. And also in that discussion, it became apparent that no one else really had been knocking on their door having this discussion. So again, didn't feel any need of urgency. For whatever reason, since that time, there has been a little bit of a run on water rights with the LCRA. A number of our neighboring communities in Travis County have since we went in have started that dialogue and had those discussions, and have moved forward with some of those water right procurement applications with LCRA. So again, I have some contacts there, and they sort of alerted me to that. And I think Ms. Wayman had noticed in some news clippings that she was noticing that happening as well. They're certainly not out of water. I don't want to imply that they are. In terms of water, and when I say out of water, I mean water rights, firm water rights. There's still plenty. There's certainly plenty for us to be had, but I think it became apparent to me that we probably should move on this sooner rather than later, and we didn't have a lot of time to hash it back and forth. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and put this on the agenda for you. I would like the right to continue formally having these discussions with LCRA, have K-Freeze start the work to start preparing the applications. We've done some initial back of the napkin calculations with K-Freeze. Those numbers are reflected here in the resolution. Again, the amount of water rights that we need to secure are very modest by anyone's calculations in terms of the overall scheme of things. 500 acre feet is probably where we will land. I'll say 499 acre feet allows us to pursue an administrative approval process through LCRA. So you might see that 500 drop to 499 if we determine that that route is a more efficient, quick way to go about it. Again, I think there's plenty there to be had for us, but I do think we probably it would be in our best interest to go ahead and secure the water rights while we have an opportunity to, and while there's still ample room here for a small community like us. So that's why it's here before you. And in adopting, if you would be so kind to adopt this resolution tonight, what it allows us to do is really in an official capacity instead of these more casual conversations that we've entered into with LCRA. This allows us to, in a formal way, let them know, yes, we're serious. Yes, we're going to apply, and we understand what we need to do. It just kind of puts us officially in the front of the line with them. So that's why I'm asking for action on this particular agenda item. So that's it. And we will, I think it's mentioned here, my plan is to either have staff or K-Freeze or myself go have a dialogue. We notified the Utility Commission of this action. We sent them this resolution. We told them that we would be one of the three of us will be before them at their next meeting to kind of have this dialogue discussion with them, bring them up to speed. We also had one-on-one conversations with your liaison to the Utility Commission, Councilman McDuffie. We did the same thing with the chair of the Utility Commission. So we've tried to kind of keep everybody up to speed and not just surprise them with this, but also convey why we're doing it and why we're trying to move quickly. That's it.
I move adoption of resolution number 2024-08-21-09.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie, a second by Ms. Hudson. Further discussion?
So how much water, I don't think in acre feet, how much water
I did some
is
Googling too.
is the city purchasing right now on an annual basis?
Right now, we had them run these numbers a couple of different ways. On a rolling 12-month, I think the most we ever procured in a single month was what?
Or I think a rolling one year, I think was like maybe 430.
Yeah,
was
I'm
about-
sorry. A rolling, the highest in a rolling 12-month was around 430.
Mhm.
430 what?
Acre
430 acre feet.
Oh, okay.
So that was kind of the high water mark. On average, it's less than that. It's more like 420, 425, something like that. But that will be part of the application that we'll take a look at. But we believe the 499 to 500 gives us some wiggle room to the upside, even if there's some. I don't foresee any particular future commercial development. Obviously, that's a goal of ours. But we did some calculations on some different scenarios and think that 499, 500 would give us some upward ability to have some additional commercial type development and still be fine with it.
So we used to have a report in here on the water usage that's not in here anymore. And if we're looking at water usage going forward, it would be nice to have that, you know, we used to have our top 10 water users listed on there and,
Yeah.
and kind of what our water usage is.
I
for the-
think we,
For the year, so we,
yeah, I think we
kinda have
dropped
that
some
in
of that
mind.
because we were struggling with the accuracy of said report.
Yes.
But we should be, now that we have the electronic meters in place, in a better position to do some of that. And,
and a utility billing person.
yeah, and some of those types of reports may also be something that's I don't know what all's yet required in the application, but there are several different types of exhibits that we're gonna have to put together, and we will have Cape Freeze do that for us. And I think it's noted here that we'll, again, back to our earlier discussion, in our budget workshop, we have ample room because we have our unexpended balances, we have our 6-month reserve, so we have plenty of dollars to put these together. And if there was ever a need for the use of reserve funds out of those, it would certainly be for the actual procurement of the water. So,
No, I think we definitely need to go forward with it. I was just, there was no information in here
yeah, on the
to get a
bearings.
feel for how much water are we using and.
Yes. I will tell you, I had a number in mind that I had a greater sense of urgency when I first asked this to go on the agenda. I'll just say it was less of a feeling of urgency when I found out 500 acre feet would be more than enough. So, Alec?
Is that kind of standard, I guess, well, I guess we were negotiating it, but like to have like unused water, and is that way it works now for us, like there's a cost to the unused water?
Yes, and basically, yes, if you use all of your firm water rights, there's one cost. If you don't use all of them, it's a lower cost. So you have that reserve. You're still paying for that reserve water, but you don't pay as much for it if you don't use it. And that is designed to help people, make sure they've got good conservation measures.
I guess there's a lot of equipment, like you don't know when this would take effect, I guess you'd still need to.
Yeah, we'll have to work all that. Another part that we have to work out is simultaneously to start a discussion with City of Austin, because although we'll procure our raw water rights from LCRA, that's just the raw water right? That's just the right to the water. But we don't have a water treatment plant. We don't have a delivery system. So all of that will still be in a separate contract. So we'll have to do a treat and delivery contract separate and apart from that with the City of Austin.
If we get the right and don't like use it or don't have the other things, and we're just paying the flat annual fee, like for having the right, like $77.
Right. And right now, that cost, so in our contract with City of Austin, all of that's rolled together. So we're procuring the water from them, and then we're simultaneously procuring their treatment and delivery of it, right? And so really all we're doing is breaking that out, and so that we will be procuring the water on our own, and then we'll still be procuring the treatment and delivery of it from the City of Austin. Now, part of the theoretically that cost should go down significantly because we're no longer paying for the actual water piece. Yes, ma'am.
And what I recall from the water contract with the City of Austin is that they require us, as we renegotiate and reach a certain level of water usage, that they will not renegotiate the current contract without us directly acquiring water rights from LCRA. Currently, we get it through the City of Austin water rights, but
Right.
they will no longer do that, so it's
Yeah.
something
That's the 2030 date. Yeah. Yeah, it's a road that we were going to eventually have to cross. We're just gonna get there a little quicker. So
And how many acre feet did you say we used in our rolling 12-month?
I think 429 was.
429 or
I think
430.
right around 429 was our highest ever.
So could the number be 600 acre feet, or could we make the threshold, why 500, is that just because the number?
It could. I mean, you could take it to 1,000. You could take it to whatever. But
To your
Well,
point,
then
you're
we're having
trying
to pay for it.
yeah, then
Right.
you're, yeah.
To your point, we're trying to
Yeah.
be
Right.
conservative or have enough, but not.
But I even asked Cape Freeze, like, what, a large mixed use development, like is that 1 acre feet? Is that 10 acre? Like, how many acre feet is that? Like a large mixed use development, I think the back of the napkin is like maybe 15 acre feet a year, or 20 acre feet a year.
So an acre feet's like 325,000 gallons. An average household uses about 300 gallons a day per unit.
Right.
So
Yeah, and they have a calculation that they have a calculation that they use to
That sounds like,
take it to
that's what the average is.
yeah.
I don't know, sounds like a lot.
They have a calculation that they convert it to like a commercial use versus, because they have those same residential numbers. Because our residential uses will really, it's probably about, it's going to be right about what we've always used. It would only be that if there was some sort of additional future commercial, development that is above and beyond what we have now. So we want to make sure that we plan for that. But again, it's pretty reasonable if we, go to 499 or 500. I think that should give us plenty of room to grow in that particular space. Question? Did you have another?
So just for context, we're using just a little over 700 gallons per household per day on average if we hit 400 acre feet in a year. Just
Okay.
FYI.
Good.
Well, it's including irrigation and commercial.
It is.
Yeah, including commercial too. Yeah. And again, like I said, a lot of that's back of the napkin. We'll obviously do some more calculation, but I think that should give us the room we need. And like I said, the 499 gets us to a little bit different administrative process, which we may determine that's easier and quicker and better.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was gonna say, getting the information on the residential and commercial water use, so we have an idea how much we're actually using.
Yeah.
And where we have opportunities for conservation would
Yep.
be helpful.
We'll do.
We could limit watering to 1 day a week.
Already do.
I'm kidding because I follow that rule. It's Thursday evening is our water day, but I see the sprinklers running all over town.
Yes.
All the days. But anyway,
Okay, you have a motion and a second. Further discussion, council? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thanks, council. We'll get back to you on that one. With that, we will move on to agenda item number 10, discussion of possible action on a recommendation from the Park Commission regarding the use of the lower park for a movie night event for Eanes Elementary on December 7th, 2024. I'll recognize Ms. Wayman, and I think we have Courtney here to represent Eanes Elementary.
Yes, I will say this was recommended for approval from the Park Commission. They had just asked that the same stipulations be put on it as were last year, which is that they would pay for 2 Rollingwood police officers and 1 Public Works employee to be there for the event. The police department to make sure that the kids will be using either the upstairs bathroom or the city hall bathroom. So to monitor all that, just maintain safety in the streets as well, and then also Public Works to make sure everything is cleaned up and they have everything they need. And so this came with a recommendation for approval. And yes, we have Ms. Harvey here too.
Courtney, step right up,
Answer any
identify yourself.
My name is Courtney Harvey, and I am a Rollingwood resident. I am the president of the Eanes Elementary PTO this year.
Very.
Yeah, I know. So I might have bags under my eyes after all the back to school stuff. But I have to say that you guys were nice enough to approve this last year. It was a huge hit. It made us, it was a little piece of Americana that doesn't exist in many places anymore, and everyone loved it. I think hopefully we got all good marks. We cleaned up the next day.
Very high mark.
We did a toy drive with the police department. It was really cute. And this year we're going to show, coming off an Olympic year and still sticking with the holiday theme, Cool Runnings from 1993. I watched it this summer with my kids.
All right.
So that's the proposal, and I'm here to answer any questions you have, but hopefully we'll have a second year of a success.
Great. Any questions, council? If not, I'm happy to take a motion. You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Great job. Congratulations. Thanks for
Thank you.
coming.
All right, please join us.
Yeah.
All right. Do you like the new street, by the way?
Yeah.
Well, you think you, yeah, so we got that.
off on shoes. Thank you.
She's also my neighbor. Agenda item number 11, update and discussion on, and no action on an ordinance amending section 18 through 56 of the city's code of ordinances regarding the regulation of outdoor pickleball play. I believe this is Mr. Glasheen's agenda item. I'll recognize Mr. Glasheen.
So just for an update on where we are, and Mr. Harris is here and can give us an update if he likes to, but we've had discussions about the pickleball ordinance, and we had some discussion at our last meeting about possibly amending the ordinance to deal with some of the concerns about whether we've inadvertently banned pickleball altogether as opposed to just regulating the noise. And since then, Mr. Harris has done a lot of work researching the issue and consulting with some experts who specialize in the sound engineering aspects of pickleball, and is working with his neighbor, Mr. Logue, to try to come to some understandings. And we just want to give that process time to work out before we took any action. And so we had it on here just as an update to explain why we're not taking action tonight, but we may take some action in the future based on whatever understandings Mr. Harris and his neighbor reach.
Thank you, Mr. Glasheen. Any questions, council, for Mr. Glasheen? Okay, anyone wishing to make comments on the items on the agenda? Happy to recognize you. Come on up.
Glenn Harris,
You know the
3012
routine?
Hatley.
Yeah.
Mr. Glasheen's summary is completely accurate, so I don't have anything to add to that at this time. I'll be respectful of your time. If there are questions for me, I can answer them. Otherwise, his summary was completely accurate.
We always like to fact check him anyway. So we're glad. A confirmation that he gave accurate information is always appreciated. Thank you. We appreciate it. Thanks for the update, Mr. Glasheen. And if there are no additional questions, we will move off of agenda item number 11.
I do want to thank Mr. Harris for all the work he's doing to get this worked out.
Yes, I do as well. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Okay, with that, we'll move off of agenda item number 11 on to agenda item number 12. Discussion and possible action on a recommendation from the CRCRC to amend recommendations previously adopted by the City Council on July 17th, 2024 regarding residential building height. I will recognize, we've got 3 here. I'm going to take these one at a time. I'll recognize Ms. Wayman to explain agenda item number 12.
All right, a few meetings ago, the City Council approved some recommendations from the CRCRC relating to residential building height. It was brought to our attention that there were potentially more recommendations that the CRCRC, either more and or amended recommendations that the CRCRC wanted to pursue. So we did let the chair know that anything, because the City Council approved that first set of recommendations, any amended recommendations, or, and I guess I'll back up and say the City Council didn't necessarily approve the recommendations. The City Council directed legal to begin drafting those into text amendments. And so we have started that process, but then we were made aware that there are additional and or amended amendments that they would like to recommend. And so I apologize for having this in your packet very late today. They actually met last night and finalized all of their recommendations, and so they are here in the packet, and we also have Chair Dave Bench here to discuss those, and that is the update on these.
I would like to, I'll recognize Mr. Bench here momentarily so you can ask any questions of Mr. Bench. I don't know what council's thoughts are on this. I would hope that your thought, and we'll see what Dave recommends as well, but my hope would be, since this was very late into the packet, but with no finger pointing there, but it's just a situation with the calendar, but if we could leave these publicly, they're publicly posted now, they're in the packet, people can take a look at them, digest them. I think that would probably be the right approach, to let them sit and not take any action on them tonight, but that's your call. And with that, I will recommend or recognize Mr. Bench.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Dave Bench, 1 Randolph Place. Actually, Mayor, you stole my thunder. That was
Oh.
exactly what my recommendation was
sorry.
going to be. Recognizing, what was presented here last month was unfortunately not fully baked, and we got found out on a couple of items that needed more attention. We've since then as well had a P&Z meeting where some of this stuff was discussed, and we found some other hiccups that really needed attention. We've given that, we have taken that on and had lots of discussion around those items. And what you have in your packet is now what we think a fully baked set of recommendations that we can take forward. My personal preference is to take it forward to P&Z anyway first before you see it again. We do have a meeting scheduled for September 4th. This will be front and center of our discussion. I would like to invite you all to attend that meeting so that you would have an opportunity to hear some of the really good discussion that is going on around this. I expect the public will show up a bit. But we think that we're about ready to put this item to bed and then take it on to public hearing soon thereafter. So I can tell you we've put a lot of time into it, and I'm pretty happy with where we are. So, any questions for me?
Question for Dave? Yes, sir, Mr. Glasheen.
So I understand that, well, first of all, I want to thank you for all for all the work that you've done on this. I know it's been a tremendous undertaking and probably much more than you expected when you signed on, but you've done a great job. Appreciate your leadership and the hard work of all the other members of the committee. Very talented people. So I know one of what you just said, what I heard you say was you'd rather this go back to P&Z before it comes back to us. And I know we have noticed a joint meeting for September 4th, and I know there's an agenda item here to take it down. And I'm wondering, I did get a chance to talk to Tony Stein from P&Z about this matter, and I thought he made a good suggestion, which is that we go ahead and continue to have the joint meeting on September 4th, but not necessarily take any action on the recommendations at that meeting, but use it as a chance for all of us to be more engaged in a more thorough discussion of the proposal and consider alternative proposals from anyone else in the public that has one. I know there's a couple of folks who've been working on alternative proposals. And then it might be, if we're not going to take any, if we don't take action on September 4th, I think it would be a welcome opportunity for us to all have a discussion. Because I know one of the problems that you had with P&Z in the past was you'd been updating us, but not them. And then when it came back to them, they felt like they were out of the loop. And I'm just concerned the same thing might happen here again, but the other way, that we're out of the loop. If you guys go, you just had a very productive P&Z meeting, you're going to have another P&Z meeting and then come back to us, and then it's going to be kind of new to us. So I think the joint meeting might be helpful. Plus, it checks a box for the procedural process that we have to go through anyway.
I agree.
Okay.
I think that works pretty well. Actually, Tony and I had some similar discussion, and I think that's what I was suggesting earlier. Is that I guess by way of invitation, I was hoping you would all show up. But I think what Councilmember Glasheen is suggesting that we formalize that a bit, and I would be all for that if you all have the time to do that.
And it's the only way we can all show up anyway, because
Sure.
otherwise it's a quorum violation.
Well, no, it wouldn't be, because we would have legal counsel there.
It was.
Yes.
It would be?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm mistaken. I thought it would be okay.
I do have one quick comment on that. Because we were, it was expressed to us that we wanted to push that public hearing, the joint public hearing. It was not noticed for as a joint public hearing, so we could hold the joint meeting, but it would not take care of that statutory
Right.
requirement at this time because we did not meet the noticing requirements.
But
for that.
if we're not going to take any public action on it, would it still be a legal meeting?
Yeah, we just
We
have to
ju-
post it.
We just,
Sorry,
okay.
yes,
Yes.
we just have to post it.
Okay.
But to
It
take
just
care of
wouldn't
those
be the
legal
hearing.
requirements, we would have to do the notice, which requires us at least 20
Oh,
days,
right.
and 20 days and 16 days
To
mailed
check the
in.
procedural
Right.
box.
I would hope that what comes out of that meeting might be a P and Z vote, not a city council vote, but a P and Z
They can't do it.
vote to
They
go
can't do it.
forward to city council.
Okay.
Can't do it without a public hearing first.
Yes, they would not
No,
be
no,
able to do it.
just recommending it to go to city council so that it can be put on a public hearing.
I think I think that might get too complicated.
Okay.
If we tried to, here's my suggestion. We have the September 4th joint meeting
Mhm.
and post it also for a joint meeting with CRCRC so they can all attend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then after that, we necessarily have to have another joint public hearing to meet the statutory requirement.
Right.
So I think we'll have two joint meetings, and I think that helps.
I do too.
And we set the formal public hearing tonight to follow the September 4th meeting. That would be my recommendation.
I agree. That's a good idea.
The only thing I would add to that is if we would need to know the text that we need to be drafting, and so what is in the packet today, we would need some kind of nod to, yes, begin drafting these recommendations into text, because I know that everybody would like to have that for that joint meeting or joint public hearing. For sure, for the joint public hearing, we would need the text, but also, for that joint meeting, and so we would just need to know what to begin drafting.
If I could comment, I would recommend we publish what is being presented to the council tonight for the September 4th meeting, and that at the September 4th meeting, we decide what's going to be published for the formal public hearing. It's not a vote to adopt, it's a vote to present this ordinance language. I don't think it'll change. I don't know that it'll change. It may not change, it may change, but we can't decide what language we want for the public hearing at this point in time because we haven't had hearing. You know, if we want to get comment, the question is, do we go ahead and tell Ashley to publish what is before us
Codified,
tonight for the formal public hearing, or do we let that develop from the September 4 meeting?
I think once we set that meeting, we can back up because we only need, 21 days?
Plus, the time for drafting. So keep in mind that what's in the packet is not fully legal language. There are definitions, there are things that would be easy to copy and paste, but there are some things that are, we want to make sure that this happens also. So we want to make sure we have time to draft that with legal, and I wouldn't want to cut that too short.
But so it has to be fully drafted before what? Before we vote on it, of course, finally, but as far as these hearings go.
Generally, for the public hearing, I would say we would generally have a text amendment at that point, the actual physical text that would be changed in our code of ordinances.
And when would that public hearing be on our current schedule? Like if we did what Ms. Brown suggested, what kind of date would we be looking at?
You could, I think date that was floated was possibly the October regular P&Z meeting. It's the first Wednesday of the month. But again, we have, then September 4th, we would get direction that this is what you need to work on the text for. And then from there, we have about 30 days until the next P&Z meeting, but we need 21 of those for notice. So once the notice goes out the door, we should have the text, because people are going to start calling and saying, hey, we got the notice, we'd like to read the text. And so that gives us 10 days between that joint meeting and the 1st of October public hearing. So just.
I have a recommendation.
Yes, ma'am.
A little bit different. I think we asked Charlie to put what has been brought to us tonight into an ordinance form. Have ordinance number and the whereases and all of that. So we get as close as possible. We have a document that's as close as possible to what might finally be adopted. At least we have a format for it.
How close do you think we are with this draft that's here, that you think it'll, how much do you think it might change?
I think this is the best text we produced, and I think it's quite close to what the final will look like.
Okay,
Yeah.
that helps.
Alec?
question. Has P and Z seen this yet?
No,
Okay.
this document is
So why are we
5 hours old.
Okay, so then why are we doing the same thing that we did last time that caused a bunch of issues and people feeling like they weren't like considered the process, in my view, the process in my view is for CRCRC to come up with these recommendations, take them to planning and zoning, have planning and zoning, give some feedback, make some tweaks, adjustments or whatever, then it lands at us. I mean, we're doing the same thing over and over again. I see the 3 agenda items, and it seems like what we're saying is pause, give time for people to take a look at this. We want to cancel the joint meeting. That's what I see here. And it seems like what we're doing is the same thing that we did last meeting. You know, we're just going to let's just go ahead and make the ordinance and have it on the 4th. Why is there a rush? Why is there a rush? Why do we not follow a process that gives people an opportunity to look at the text? I think what Mrs. Wayman had said about doing the October timeframe, I mean, that seems pretty tight to me. But if you're going to try and push it, that's the way I would do it. We can have the same thing on the 4th that we already said, gets all this discussion, then have Charlie draft something that we look at on the October meeting. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Yes, ma'am?
One of the reasons for doing a joint meeting on September 4 is we've got P&Z, we've got the CRCRC, and they just want to know, do we go to P&Z first? Do we go to the council first? Do we go to both of you first?
P&Z
And
first.
in my view, because we have 7 people from the CRCRC, we've got a lot of people from the public interested in this. Let's have everybody in one room for once so that everybody hears the same explanations at the same time. And that's what I think would be the benefit of keeping that September 4th day and doing it as a joint meeting of the council, the P&Z, and the CRCRC. It's not to take action. It's so everybody hears the same thing at the same time and can ask questions.
I agree with you, and I think you both make good points, and I think that we could maybe combine those by saying that we have the September 4th joint hearing just for the purposes that Councilmember Brown described, and that, you know, we heard from Mr. Tony Stein, and then let's try to target this for a November vote, and then so we're not squeezing the time before October and rushing it with only a few days to get the actual draft out. It'll give more public time.
Can I comment on that?
You may,
What-
before you do, I'm going to pull up, just so it's in front of you, agenda item number 14, because we're talking about
Yeah.
meetings and reschedule. So they're
what-
both in front of you now.
What has to happen between September 4 and whenever this comes to, we've got to have a formal public hearing before P&Z and a formal public hearing before the council, before P&Z can vote and before the council can vote.
Is that right?
P&Z has to issue has to have a public hearing and issue a recommendation. You can combine the public hearings. So if we have a joint meeting of all 3 groups on the 4th, then the next question is, do we want to say we'll have and the public hearing takes the 21 days plus Charlie's time to draft between the September 4th and and here's the rub. If we don't take if neither the PRZ or the council takes any action on the 4th, what does Charlie draft? So then do you have a meeting, another meeting at P&Z and at council to say, Charlie, go draft this, then have a formal public hearing, and then so that ordinance draft can be heard? That's the struggle here. And so, in my view, if you could come shortly after that September 4th meeting, if there could be not a public hearing, but a meeting of P&Z, and they can say yay or nay, or here's our changes to what we heard on the 4th. And then that could be given to Charlie to draft, we could have a joint meeting of council and P and Z. P and Z could give its recommendation, then it comes to us at the next council meeting, and we can take a final vote, and we have, that's the way, that seems to me the most efficient way to get everybody's input and get something in a step, one more step closer to a final draft to get it to.
I want to take more comment from council. We do have Mr. Stein who's raised his hand. We'll also listen to him, his comments as well. Any other council? Alec, did you have something else? So I'm happy to recognize you. We'll come back. Okay, with that, thank you, Dave. Stay close. Chair recognizes Mr. Stein.
Hi, everybody. I just thought I'm on the call, so I figured I'd
Welcome.
let y'all know my thoughts for what that's worth. But I agree. I think that having everybody in one room at the same time is a great idea, and something I wish we could do more of when you're discussing meaty topics like this. But I think that would be helpful. And my only comment was, I guess a hesitancy to set our council, going on drafting, code right now. I think, just speaking for myself, that threw me off a little bit at the last meeting. Is, okay, we're going to talk about this for the first time in a few months, and then we're supposed to have code, next week, and then we're supposed to vote on code shortly thereafter. So, I would be inclined, since we don't know what, progress or changes or whatever may come out of that September meeting, it feels like we might wind up wasting some city resources if there's, more tweaks to it that come out of that September meeting. And maybe after that meeting, we'd be able to ask council if they would have time to, generate what we talked about in time for the public hearing in October. And if not, maybe it's the November meeting. But that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. And I'll weigh in with my 2 cents, which is worth about that much. But I'll sort of argue both sides of this coin, because I actually agree with both of you. I think, to Ms. Brown's point, I think you're, both as a policy-making body here, as the planning and zoning, and as CRC, I think you're not ever going to land this plane if you don't get some actual language in ordinance form to look at. That said, I also agree with Alec, which is how I opened this statement. In this particular instance, because these are new amendments to previously adopted recommendations, and they just went in the packet today. Again, no one's fault. It was just the circumstances. I think letting them sit for whatever time, however y'all want to do it, I think you will receive less criticism if you let them sit at least for some amount of time to try to let people digest what's on these pages, and then as quickly as possible move to what Ms. Brown is suggesting and try to get some ordinance language. So however you want to do that, but I think those are my thoughts. I do think you need to actually look at language, because this going back and forth with things that aren't actually in ordinance form is difficult in any circumstance. But I think giving people some time to look at it and digest it and understand it in its raw form is probably first best. But anyway, those are my 2 cents, but it's your call.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
can I
sir.
be recognized for a motion then?
You may.
So I make a motion that we go ahead and have the joint meeting as discussed with CRCRC, Planning and Zoning, and Council on the 4th, but we don't request council to draft anything until either at that meeting or after that meeting. We'll see how that meeting goes, and at the end of that meeting, we could send it to council for drafting. And if we're not ready, we're not ready. But I think hopefully we'll be at a point at the end of that meeting we can ask council to draft something.
Good thoughts. So the motion is to
go ahead and continue with the September 4th joint meeting, but not draft code until at least September 4th.
Okay, pause there. you have a motion, council. Well, first, you have a motion, council. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Mr. McDuffie. 1 second. Okay, I'll recognize Ms. Wayman real quickly just to give context to the motion that's before you.
So we currently have a vote on the books to have a joint public hearing on September 4th. I think we would need action because the city council does have to take action to schedule a joint public hearing. So I think we need action to cancel the joint public hearing and then instead schedule a joint public meeting that also includes CRCRC as well, if that.
That was what I was gonna bring up in discussion, so.
And just out of curiosity, why do we have to cancel that as a hearing and change it to a meeting? What's the difference?
Because you previously adopted a joint public
Hearing, and we did not notice for a hearing, so we did not do the 21 days mailed.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So it's failed, the previous action has failed, so we have to clean it
You
up.
gotta clean that up and then, you can, then you can
Yeah.
go again.
Plus, we have to include CRCRC.
Right, okay, well
Which we
then,
did not before.
then that's the motion.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you I'm gonna let you withdraw your previous
Okay.
motion. Withdrawn. And now I'll let you restate
All right.
to cancel the September, let's just keep it real simple with this first one. I will recognize you to cancel the September 4th joint public hearing.
Okay, so moved.
Okay, you have a motion by Mr. Glasheen to simply cancel the September 4th, 2024 joint public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a second by Mr. McDuffie. I think everybody's clear on that. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. All right, you've cleaned that up. Now,
Motion to set a joint public meeting on September 4th with City Council, Planning and Zoning, and CRCRC.
you have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Is there a discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Here's the concern I have. We get to September 4, and then the next step would be action by P and Z. They would have to make a recommendation to make certain changes so that there's something for Charlie to draft up then, and something to set for the formal public hearing. So do we also, if we wait till the 4th to do, there's no action being taken on the 4th. So what I would recommend is that we also set a date for a P&Z meeting. I don't know what their scheduled meeting would be. Maybe it's the next week.
That is their scheduled meeting.
That is
the
their-
4th,
Their scheduled meeting is what date?
September 4th.
Okay.
So it'd
So
be
it'd
another
be
month.
another month if we don't set another date tonight for P and Z to meet. It's gonna be another month before they meet. And then it'll be several weeks before there's something for Charlie to draft. And then that would come to council and we would say, set a joint public hearing, and then there would be 21 days,
Yeah, and?
which would take it past Christmas. So that's.
So the only
what
way
we're-
for us to get it past Christmas is to start drafting an ordinance now that we can go on the 4th?
That's
or-
not correct.
Okay.
If I could,
I'm just saying, I don't understand, when I say, we all volunteer here, we all, a lot of us work, and
may I
we
finish
have
what I was
meetings
going to
set.
propose, and then you can comment.
Okay.
My proposal would be, is that we set a special meeting date for P and Z following the 4th, so that, we'll have, or if everybody's, if we wanna just play this out under the current timetable, we can do that as well. So, I just want everyone to be aware if we, don't set a schedule for what's to follow after the 4th. We're not talking about the substance, we're just talking about when P and Z will meet and when the council will meet, so that if there is a recommendation to adopt something, we're not losing even more time.
I have a question about that. So P and Z cannot make a recommendation September 4th. They have to have the 21 days notice and public hearing before they can even make a recommendation. Okay.
That's correct.
I just want to make sure I understood that.
Yes.
But to your point, excuse me, is there will be discussion about these items on the 4th. If there was something obvious that could be suggested at that time that P and Z wanted to have, changes that needed to be made, starting tonight, they have several weeks actually to look at some of this material, okay? Could it not be motioned that evening that their recommended changes, and then that be codified?
Yeah, it could.
Yeah, you
Could we do that?
Yeah, you can make whatever drafting recommendation.
You haven't had the public hearing.
Yeah, but we could
It's
still
not
start
that.
drafting. It's not to vote on a recommendation, but if they know where they're headed, they could ask it on September 4th. If we have a great meeting where we all come up with a consensus on these code changes, and then we could send it to drafting at the end of that meeting on the 4th, and then they could have their public hearing where they actually vote up or down on those, on their recommendation on that code, as soon as it could be scheduled. But we could even start scheduling it now for, if we wanted to, for say a week after September 4th, and we'd still have time for 21 days notice, right? If it was the 11th or the 18th even.
But it wouldn't be drafted yet, so we would send out notice well before
Oh,
the
you want it
September
drafted
4th.
before it's noticed.
Right, because we send out notice to the
Got it.
community, they're gonna wanna read the
So
draft.
let's say that best case scenario, we come to consensus on September 4th. It gets sent to drafting. Charlie needs a couple weeks to draft it, right?
I could get it done in a shorter period of time than that, because
Let's say a week. So then he gets it back on the 11th, and then you send out a 21-day notice around there. So now you're around the first week of October already. And that could be, does it help if that's a joint meeting in October? Does that help?
Here's the problem. If you're not posting for action on September 4, then you can't take action on September 4.
Well, you can ask the council to draft. You're not really taking
that-
any action.
It's only possible action, isn't it?
May we have council respond to that?
yeah, I can start drafting any time. I mean, I could actually take what's in here, put it in ordinance form, and you guys can then dice it up if you want. And honestly, that's why I was planning on doing that no matter what.
Yeah.
So that I could get ahead of the curve a little bit.
So it's not a waste of time and money for you to start working on
No,
it?
it's gonna have to be done anyway, and it's gonna have to be done anyway, and if it's close to what everybody wants, then it's just a matter of, okay, we'll strike this section.
Even
Well,
if
and
it-
you have page, you'll have line numbers
It'll be-
and topic headings that makes comments, more, you can focus the comments to the actual.
It'll help to have it even for our joint meeting on the 4th. It would help, I think. Okay.
So I
Just needs to
just
write-
don't see a lot of hacking and slashing going on. So.
Okay.
Just needs write really dark draft.
It will say
Because, if
very
you look,
good point.
if you look at the text of the recommendations coming from our experts here, it's technical, and so it's gotta, sometimes the draft will have setback and we need yard in there, so it will help. It is not a substantive vote on the content, it is just a guide to walk through for the conversations.
And honestly, from my experience with the trying to put the landscaping and tree recommendations into an ordinance form, that took 2 separate meetings with them, just to make sure I understood exactly what they were trying to accomplish and to make sure I had it in the right form. So it does take some time.
It will clarify the proposal, it will clarify the comments on the proposal.
Let's do it.
But then, so we're gonna ask Charlie, I would,
Make a motion.
yeah.
Okay, you have it.
But let's talk about, there's your motion on the table about the September 4th meeting. Then we have to decide whether or not we wanna schedule a P and Z meeting, a special P and Z meeting, or at that,
Okay, let's dispose of the motion and that you have before you, and that is simply to set on September 4th, 2024, a joint public meeting with yourselves, Planning and Zoning, and CRCRC.
with Charlie's draft.
With supporting documentation being provided based on what you've seen tonight, without it being adopted. I'm going to get back to that.
A rough draft.
I'm going to get back to a rough draft.
Rough draft.
Yeah. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
There being 4 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Okay, you've done that. Now I'm going to skip back up to 12, and I'm going to clarify that whole draft discussion that we just had. I'm prepared to move off of agenda item number 12, there being no action taken on the actual recommendations from CRCRC to amend the recommendations previously adopted. That's my recommendation to you, is that you don't actually take an action this evening on this document that was just posted to your packets this afternoon. That said, understanding that Charlie's going to do a rough draft of those words for everyone's consideration and discussion on the 4th. That's, you do with it what you want, but I think
So moved.
I think that's your best bet. Okay, no action on 12. Don't even require a motion, but if
Right.
you want to take no action, you can make that motion, but otherwise we'll just move off of it and having not taken
No
it.
action on the no action motion.
Okay,
But
great.
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Yes.
Just because I'm not familiar with what was and what is or whatever. How different are the recommendations?
There are
from-
more of them. Councilmember Robertson had seen at the top of our recommendations the difference between what we had approved with regard to the definition of what building height was, and what was actually on the text.
Okay.
So we went back to the CRCRC and we approved formally what was on the page. And what has happened over the past several weeks is I've combed back through all of our recommendations, all of our meetings, to ensure that whatever it is you're looking at had approval. And you'll notice in this document that each line has got a date of approval on it. Now, some of those approvals are merely some word changes, small things. So what you're seeing is the most up-to-date version of what it is. You're not going to find any surprises in it.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just wondering, from a standpoint of what P and Z has looked at,
Yeah.
how different what they did look at and approve is from what
There was
you've
a
currently
major
presented.
question at the P&Z meeting about one of the graphics that was in the supporting documentation that you had. I didn't provide that supporting documentation to P&Z. We only had the code language, or the language that was to be coded. And some discussion came up in the P&Z meeting that frankly I couldn't address well, and which caused us to reconvene the Heights Subcommittee to square it up, to ensure that we ourselves understood perfectly what we were talking about. It is complicated. Some of the geometries are odd. So we're comfortable now. In fact, I've got a little model that I can show you, but I won't. But it will come out probably on September 4th, or something like it, so that the public can see whenever we're talking about the things that we're talking about, kind of what it means in 3D. So,
Okay.
But just to make sure that P and Z doesn't feel like something's getting sprung on them again.
That's where I am.
actually, it
Can-
helps answer questions that they had. So actually, it was a useful meeting. It was a useful P&Z meeting. It helped us bring back a better product.
Okay, well, I just want to respect the process here and make sure that they don't feel like they're being left out of the loop. And the recommendations can be sent to them, like, tomorrow, right?
Yeah, we can do that tomorrow.
Just so that,
They're in the packet, they're publicly posted, but
right.
we're happy to send them.
Just so that they know they're there and they have plenty of time to take a look at it and
And
make
the-
sure that they're comfortable
I
with
think
it
that's great.
before we have the meeting,
And
so
Thank
that
you.
way,
Yeah, and that no action was taken
Yeah.
on them, but they're coming to you.
right.
Good job.
I'm gonna go back to I'm still on 14. Bear with me. Ashley brought something to my attention. I would like to entertain a motion, if someone would make it, that the September 4th joint public meeting also include the consideration of the residential landscape and tree canopy management issue, so that they still travel together. Otherwise, we've lost that one.
Move to add the residential tree canopy management to the September 4th meeting that we just previously approved.
You have a motion under agenda item number 14 to include the residential landscape and tree canopy management on the September 4th joint public meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Are there questions on that? Just making sure that they're continuing to move together and you don't lose it. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
Being 4 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Okay. I think, council, that cleans you up on your previous actions on September 4th. I think that sets you up for your joint meeting with the other two bodies on September 4th, including the tree canopy stuff. I think you're good to go on 14. Yes, ma'am.
I think we're good to go on 14. I would like further discussion on 13, so that we,
About to pull that one up. Is everyone ready to move off of 14?
Yep.
Yes.
14 is also for possible
Well-
action, correct?
It is?
Okay, great.
one question though.
Yes, ma'am.
If
Yeah,
we
already.
were to discuss, do we want to discuss now
This is for the meeting.
what follows the September 4th meeting, or we just leave that open?
I think
Do we want to set a date for if we take no action, there will be the next, time that we could consider setting a public hearing would be the city council September, I guess at the city council September meeting, we could set a joint hearing if we felt like we were at that point.
You could also,
And at that joint meeting, the P and Z could act or not act depending on where they were.
You could
in
also
the
take
process.
action at because we're gonna treat that September 4th. You can take action in and of your own body at that meeting as well, so.
I thought we were noticing it solely as
A meeting, but I mean, you can,
We could
without,
add an item.
you could add an
still.
item, you could add something like to set future meeting, like you could do something like that.
There could be a separate item after, just discussion on the, building height and the trees to set.
so set an item on that agenda for P and Z to decide when they might take it up, and then we decide when
Yeah,
we
you
might
could,
take it
as a
up.
council member, on your portion of that agenda, you could set
Okay.
something just like you do on
Alright.
one of these agendas.
And-
And then I think
I don't
we-
think I'm
No,
misguiding
you're good.
you on that, okay?
That's a good idea. Can we just add that now as an item for that meeting to discuss setting future meetings?
Yes,
Just
and
go ahead and get it.
scheduling a public hearing.
Good idea.
Yeah, is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Is there a
Second.
second? You have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Got it.
And that motion was to add to the September 4th agenda the
Discussion.
possibility to set future meetings.
Yes, or public hearings.
Or public hearings, yeah. Okay. Okay, I think you've got all
Thanks
kinds of.
for working us through it.
You're
Commissioner.
welcome. I lost myself a time or two. Okay, with that, we will move off of agenda item number 14. We're going to move off of agenda item number 12, there being no action taken on agenda item number 12. And now I'm going to pull up agenda item number 13, discussion and possible action on a recommendation from the CRCRC that the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission hold a workshop regarding the proposed amendments related to residential building height. I'm gonna let Ms. Wayman explain. We kind of missed one to put in front of you that was a recommendation that came from CRCRC. She's gonna explain that to you, but, spoiler alert, I'm going to suggest that you also make a motion to simply punt that also to September 4th, because I think it has merit, but I think whatever y'all talk about and discuss on the 4th probably has bearing on if or how or when or how you do that. So that's going to be my recommendation to you. But with that, I'll explain, or Ms. Wayman will explain what it is.
Yes, so at the June 25th CRCRC meeting, a motion was made to recommend to have a workshop with City Council and Planning and Zoning. It was during the discussion on building height, and there had been talks of what that workshop might look like, having an engineer or some kind of third party to, to take the proposed rules and apply them to different homes in the neighborhood to see whether it would or would not be allowed to be built under the proposed rules. I think we might have kind of misinterpreted that motion at that meeting and thought it was maybe the CRCRC was supposed to schedule this workshop. But when we went back and really looked at what the actual motion it was to recommend to have a workshop with City Council and Planning and Zoning. So we interpreted that to be that the City Council would need to take action to set such a workshop if they wanted to have it.
And I want to clarify for the record, too, on the record. Before we understood the specifics of that motion, there was discussion behind the scenes among staff, among members of CRC, community members with me. Before I understood that was the actual recommendation that was to come to you, I did make numerous comments to numerous people. That's fine. I'm fine with it, with this caveat. I'm fine using my budget discretionary spending authority to spend a couple of grand to let y'all do a workshop, but if it's going to be an expensive endeavor, then I'm not going to approve that expenditure, and I would have to bring it to you all to make that call. So for the record, that was where I was then, it's where I am now, it's where I'll be in a week from now.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
It seems like the September 4th meeting that we're planning is kind of a workshop, isn't it?
Well, let me clarify. Yes, but I think what this was a workshop with engineering professionals, with people who we pay to know how to review plans under it. Like it was really much more. Hey, if we're gonna build a sausage making machine, let's run some sausage through this thing and see what it looks like. and that would require us to know how much sausage we're running through the machine and who's going to process it and all of those sorts of things.
So, would it make sense to have that be part of the September 4th joint meeting where we have the engineers here to?
I don't think you can, because
Okay.
I think you're going to need. I don't want to ask K-Freeze or ATS or anyone else to review a set of plans under X.
Right.
Because they're going to say to me, okay, well, what is, they're going to want the same thing that Ms. Brown was talking about. They're going to want to see that in an ordinance form to know how to do it.
So we can't really have a workshop till we get an ordinance, right?
And that's why I think you ought to talk about it on the 4th, because you may say, yeah, that's a good idea, but it needs to fit here in front of this meeting and this meeting, or you need to do it at the end before we take final act. Like you may want to line that up somewhere down in your order of operations and I don't know where that is, or you may decide, no, we don't want to do a workshop, we don't want to pay for it. I don't know what you'll decide, but.
Sorry to interrupt, but it seems to me we call it a workshop, but no one really knows what that is. So if what we're really talking about is, does the council want to spend money to have K-Freeze apply the text to, I don't know what, an existing building plan, a future building plan, an imaginary building plan,
can we carry this forward?
Yeah.
Just leave this decision of a workshop and let's make a motion to extend item 13 carry it forward to the next September 4th meeting.
Second.
I will accept that I'm gonna say something. I will accept the motion. I will accept the second. But where you got just now is exactly where your mayor got. Like, great, but what's, like, if I've gotta go ask Kay Freeze to tell me how much it's gonna cost, like, I don't even know, like, are we drawing, are they drawing the plans? Are we supplying them plans? If we're supplying them plans, I'm not gonna be the one to pick the winners and losers of who those plans are, so you gotta go find some volunteers to do it. So that's where I was of like.
And who does this person work, you know,
And
who do
after
they work with?
watching-
Are they working with P and Z, or are they working with CRCRC? Are
Right.
they working with the council? Are they working with Ashley?
Right.
To come up with whatever it is.
Whatever.
It doesn't have a very well-defined
Right.
parameters.
So that was my hesitation on it as well. So
But
yes,
then I
sir.
think we probably all agree that the general idea behind the thing is to give people an opportunity to get comfortable with what the proposal is. That's
I think it's a useful recommendation, which is why I think CRCRC adopted it, because I think that you probably ought to run some sausage through the sausage making machine and see what it looks like. But again, I'm not going to be the one to pick the plan or draw them. So. Okay,
I
so you
think
have a
we carry it
motion
forward.
to punt it to
I'm good with that.
that same September 4th meeting. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
It does seem like the professionals on the CRCRC have already run some of the sausage through the machine.
Well, and that's what I was about to say. After
Yeah.
watching some of the
If-
CRC, part of what I heard in some of the discussions is a feeling that they've been working for a year and a half, and all those meetings have been open to the public. And so to have yet another workshop where we're paying professionals to do the same thing that members of the CRCRC have done repeatedly on multiple properties,
Yes.
is maybe not a good expenditure of funds or things of that. If we can settle on, if people who are objecting have 1 or 2 properties that they want to see run through the sausage machine, and we can figure out how much that costs, then I could see that perhaps that would have some merit. But if it's just gonna be yet another stalling of, okay, well, all right, that one worked, but how about this one, and that type of thing. So if to your point, Mayor, if people are objecting, I would invite them to put forward the properties that they want to run through the sausage machine, and then we can start considering it in real terms rather than having it as an open-ended whatever comes up.
Good deal.
I think it's
And-
really discounting the
It is.
professional experience of our CRCRC members who are already doing this work.
It is. I will say from an administrative side, you might though want to make sure that the outcomes that you got with the very capable professionals on CRCRC does match up with the outcomes that you would get from the actual professionals that you have. Like, I think there's legitimacy to wanting to make sure.
They would have to be trained on it because CRCRC members understand what it is they're proposing and how to do it, and anybody else that you bring in is not gonna be familiar with it.
All
So-
good
To the
points.
point, they would have an ordinance, they would have the draft language of the ordinance, and then
Right.
that would be.
Right.
All good points for
We have-
September 4th. Yep. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 15, discussion and possible action on an ordinance designating that the front yard of a lot shall be the yard which abuts the addressed street. This is Ms. Brown's agenda item. Recognize Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have seen this item before. There's been a public hearing. What's happened since the last time this was before the council is that P and Z has had a public hearing on this matter. It's the front yard ordinance. Ms. Hudson brought this issue to our attention, that we have not had anything directly in the ordinance that precludes a house from having the front of the house not on the address street, or that requires that the front of the house face the 30-foot front yard setback. So this amendment would amend the definition of front yard to say that the front yard abuts the address street of the lot. It would also say that, and so because that is now a finite rule, then, or defined rule is a better term. Since that's now the defined rule, it eliminates the language that the building official determined the front of the lot. And so that went to P&Z. P&Z approved that language without reservation. Well, they approved that language, but they also raised the question that that language doesn't actually require that the front door face the address street. What it requires is that the front, the 30-foot setback abut the address street. It doesn't require that the front of the house face the 30-foot setback. And so this second draft that you see is language that would then require that the primary entrance of the dwelling face the address street, or that there be a clearly designated walkway or other structure that gets you from the curb of the address street to the front, to the primary entrance. For example, Jeannie Nyer's home has an entrance off a driveway not directly facing the address street. A number of other homes, the home across the street from me has a driveway, but the address street is shortly around the corner, front corner. So that's why this uses primary entrance rather than the front door, so that there's some leeway. You could still have, the point of all of this is to get an emergency vehicle or first responder from the curb where the address is to the front door. And also to require that that be accessible from the address street. So I think we've closed the loop with this language. It hasn't gone to P&Z. So if this language meets with approval of the council, then we would send the second draft back to P&Z for approval of the underlined language in 107-74. We can go ahead tonight and, if it's your preference, adopt the ordinance without that language, because everyone's gone through that approval process at this point. It's gone through P&Z. If the council is in agreement, then that ordinance, keep me straight, we've had the public hearings on this. We've had the public hearings on this ordinance, I believe.
Okay.
So here's the options. You can adopt the first draft that has received, this council has reviewed it, approved it, sent it to P&Z for their review and approval. They've approved it.
I don't believe we've had the public hearings
Right.
on this, actually, so I don't think anything can be adopted tonight. I think that we'll need to
Okay.
get sent through the public hearing process.
I can't keep
I know,
all of it
we've had
straight.
so many go through that
So,
process.
the question is, we could either send this back to P&Z, the second draft back to P&Z for their review, or we can decide to set a public hearing and a joint public hearing on the second draft. And that would get both P&Z and the council with this language before them to be able to make a decision, to have it adopted.
What's your preference? What do you want to move to do?
I think my preference would be to take the Well, I really don't have a strong feeling either way. I don't think there's any,
Urgency.
there's been no comment from the public on this. There's been no opposition at P and Z. P and Z brought up the language about adding the front door issue so that that loophole is closed. I guess if we wanted to, we could send it back to P and Z and ask them to say, are you okay with sending this to, setting this for a public hearing? That would be what their decision would be, or we could set it for a public hearing with them. And they could tell us when they, at the end of the public hearing, P and Z would have to make a decision on this to go forward. Make a recommendation, yea or nay, but they could do it at the public hearing.
Okay, you've heard the options. I'm open to.
I'd like to hear discussion before I'll make a motion, but I'd like to hear
Fair enough.
discussion.
My only one comment was like, I thought this was like for the corner lots or something, so that the people don't play games, I guess, with like setbacks and stuff. So that's fine. I don't like care what side they decide to put their front door on, though, and whether or not there's a sidewalk to it.
Well, it's a safety concern.
I know, but I'm just saying.
But I
Personally, don't
agree,
care.
I agree with Alec, because, I mean, safety concerns, like, you should have non-slip floors in your house too, but.
Did you read the wording, the response from the fire chief?
No, I didn't.
The fire chief has recommended that it is confusing for them when the address the house doesn't match the address.
Right. So, what I would,
Or we have a few houses where you can't get to the front door from the address. You have to go around the corner.
I mean, don't do that. Someone shouldn't do that. Just don't
well, and
design a
that's
house.
why we're,
Why
that's
do
why
they
we,
need the
that's
city
why
to
we.
tell them not to do it?
Unless the code says they can't.
They don't need
We
the
already-
city to tell them not to do it. They don't need the city to tell them not to do it. Don't do stupid stuff.
I agree. I mean, it's just like,
But we're
But it's
approving
happening.
building
It's
plans
happening.
with stupid stuff in it.
Okay,
so.
one at a
it's
time.
happening.
One at a time.
Yeah.
I do.
What if it's, here, let me explain, or here's my gravest concern. Let's say, like we've had one enormous fire. There was no question where that house was because the address was in front of the house. Let's take a house, and we have this. It's a house that sits on, Farley and Bettis. The front of the house faces Bettis. The address is Farley. What if that catches on fire? How quickly can the first responders get in there if they can't find the address? They're gonna be going, the problem is they'll be going down Bettis to find it. And the house is faces Farley. The
Be going down
address is on Bettis, but the house faces Farley. So it's not just that the resident is stupid, it impacts other people. That's we can,
Look,
people are taking advantage of the loophole that the ordinance doesn't prohibit this, situations.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Agreed.
Alec?
So,
Well, hold
So
on.
that's
Alec.
the reason for it. We've already had this ordinance before us once.
Okay, I recognize
and
Alec
it
real
was-
quick for comment.
No, I mean, my whole point was like, we had this stuff we pointed. I was just saying, I don't really personally care what side someone decides to put their front door on. I just don't.
Okay,
I mean, that's it. That's all.
Okay.
Phil?
I mean to get everyone upset about it.
Got it.
okay.
Phil?
My recommendation is to put forward the language with the entrance stuff, the second to P and Z, and let them set, if that's amenable to them, and then they can set, the public hearing and that, and go forward with that. Since that's what I think is the best solution for the community is the second one with the entrance language. Let's put that forward.
Okay. Sarah?
The other concern that I have with this is that when I brought it up, I said that I thought we should have noticing requirements, like the public notice requirements for the building permit.
Yep.
When somebody is trying to reorient a house because it changes where the setbacks are. And they should be providing notice to their neighbors because that has a direct impact on the surrounding neighbors. And we haven't addressed that part of it in any of this.
Okay. Additional, Kevin?
Which address would the smoke be coming from if the house was on fire, is my question.
Noted. Anything else?
No. Now, I agree with Alec that I don't really care where they put their front door. I do think that if people are gaming setbacks with the way their house is oriented, that's a problem, and we need to fix it. But like, I don't want to tell Jeannie Nair she can't have a door on the side.
That's why we're adding this
That's why it said
language.
entrance rather than front door.
That's
Well,
why
it says
we,
primary entrance, right?
Yes.
And so it's kind of like, which bedroom's the
okay,
master
you're
bedroom?
not reading the second clause.
Okay.
The second clause says, or shall be accessible from the address, street of the lot, and have a physical feature that identifies the location of the primary entrance of the dwelling.
Well-
The person who raised that question with me, I addressed in an email, and I said, please read the second clause, and she read the second clause, and she said, oh, now I see what you're getting at.
Okay.
So I think that concern has gone away.
Well, I support sending it to P and Z as you guys
Yeah.
have asked, and so I don't have a problem with it. I was just sort of more commenting generally philosophically that, you know, just gets
This doesn't-
late and we get into so many details of these things. It's just.
Okay. Good information for everybody to make a vote decision
Yeah.
on, and I'm open for any motions.
Yes. I recommend that we send the draft in the packet that's labeled Draft Ordinance Front Yard 4879-9544-3644.3 updated 8/20/2024 to P and Z with the request that they consider and take action on whether or not this proposed ordinance should be adopted.
You have a motion, is there a second?
And to set a public hearing.
And to,
They decide.
they will decide to set the public hearing?
Can we do that?
You can send it straight. You can send it straight to public hearing at the next time we can get it noticed for, if you would like. It doesn't have to go to them again for them to set the public hearing. That can be something council can do.
Okay. Well, I guess for their recommendation as to whether any changes need to be made before setting it for public hearing.
Before setting it, okay.
That would get their input one more time.
Okay. You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 16. Discussion and possible action to adopt a resolution to designate the city administrator as the acting city secretary. This is Ms. Brown's agenda item. A good catch. Recognize Ms. Brown to open it up.
This would, pending, when our city secretary resigned, that's left us without a formal designation of a city secretary. And there's certain statutory duties and certain duties under our own ordinances that can only be handled by the city secretary, and the appointment of a city secretary is a function of the council, so that this resolution would formally appoint our city administrator, Ashley Wayman, as acting city secretary.
Good explanation, all true and accurate. Again, good catch on that one. Recommend that you do adopt this resolution. Is there a motion?
I move we adopt draft resolution 2024-08-21-16.
Yeah, you have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. Just a quick comment. We obviously did post for this position. We've had some applications, and it's my intent to update you in executive session where appropriate, as appropriate, at your next regularly. No, what did I say I was going
I
to do?
think we talked about the 4th.
I'll probably brief you in executive on the 4th, and then probably we'll talk about it. But there may be some action then to be taken at the next meeting. So more to come, but it's not related to this agenda item, but shoehorn it in there for you. Okay, you have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. 5 ayes, no nays. Motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 17, discussion and possible action on ordinance amending chapter 2 of the city's code of ordinances, adding article 8 regarding waterline breakage. It's the agenda item that you had before you in previous meetings, and I recognize Ms. Wayman to give you a refresher.
Yes, at the June City Council meeting, the City Council approved a recommendation from the Utility Commission regarding a policy for water line breaks and ensuring that people are able to be held responsible for those when it's a contractor or someone else who breaks a city water main. The ordinance we have brought before you today simply says just that the City Council will adopt a policy dictating the financial responsibility and payment for water line breaks, and that way we didn't have to put all the language in here of, you know, how you're going to calculate water loss and all of that. It's just that the City Council will adopt a policy, and that will dictate how we can charge for that. And so that amendment is here in the packet, as well as the policy that was adopted at that meeting. And then this way it's better, we can amend that policy much easier than we can amend the ordinance. So that's something that it makes it a little more fluid and easier for the City Council to amend. And so at this point, we're just recommending and asking for that ordinance to be approved so that it can be placed in our code, and then we can officially begin collecting all of the water loss and additional charges for breaks of water mains.
And they've already adopted the policy, so you don't need a second motion because the policy is already done.
Policy is adopted.
Okay, so
it's
this
the
is just
ordinance.
making all that work
Mhm.
together. Okay.
And to be totally clear, I think we can charge for that anyways with city property that gets damaged. It's just, this is a very clear way to put something in our code so nobody ever comes back and says, where is it in our code? And we're fighting with them if we have it very clearly stated that we can do this.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we enforce this like any other code violation if they fail to pay?
Yes, ma'am.
Through the
Okay.
court.
All right.
Open to a motion.
I move we adopt the draft ordinance 2024-08-21-17 reimbursement for water line breaks.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 18. Discussion and possible action regarding the administrative services agreement between the City of Rollingwood and the Rollingwood Community Development Corporation. This is a annual check the box situation that we do to get all of our budgeting and everything else in line. I will recognize Ms. Wayman to remind you of what we've done every year in the past.
Yes, so the actual agreement does not need to be re-signed every year. It actually automatically renews. But what it does talk about is the amount of that administrative services agreement, which is the amount that the RCDC pays the city for their services in administering, all of their programs. They have actually, generally, they wouldn't have approved their budget yet, but they approved their budget last week, and they included the same amount that had been included last year, which was $72,000. And so basically the intent of this item is to make sure council's okay with that number, because we don't want them to approve a budget, it come to you all in the budget form, and then the budget get rejected if that is a concern. And so we want to make sure that that number is generally okay with the council before bringing forward their budget to you all next month.
And this is a little cleanup item that we sort of stumbled upon several years ago because we did run into a situation where we had disagreement. So this gets all of the process aligned so that everything's moving simultaneously or in order of operation correctly. So.
And are you happy with the amount and the process by which it was set?
Absolutely.
We are,
Okay.
and it's in your budget already.
Yes.
So,
And the good thing about the agreement is it leaves it open to something that's mutually agreed upon by both council and the RCDC. So if one year they happen to have 20 projects and we're doing all sorts of work, we can always come back and say we want to amend that amount. So it's nice.
with that, I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve the agreement.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 19, update on the status of the Rollingwood trademark applications. We do have a little bit of news for you.
It's not great news this time. Sorry. I was hoping for better. We actually just got notified yesterday that our applications were rejected. So they've been in queue for
We've got a plan. Hold on.
a while. I think the revision process is not, I don't think it's a full rejection. I think it needs a revision, and then we'll come back and, we'll send an amended application. So
And we go back to the bottom of the list?
I really hope not. I will definitely be bringing up the fact that we've been in line since March of 2023 on these. So, but I have actually a meeting scheduled tomorrow with somebody with Charlie's firm to figure out why they sent us some long letters about things that need to be changed. And I have heard that this isn't the first time that this has happened. And of course, they have a new staff, as we heard last month, reviewing these. So I don't know if they've changed the review process or something, but we're going to get to the bottom of it. Yeah.
So that's your update, and there's no action to be taken. With that, we move off agenda item number 19 and continue to bring an update next time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
You have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You are adjourned.